Welcome, dear listener, to an exploration of the past. As you prepare for a peaceful night of rest, let yourself be carried away to an era quite unlike the one we know today. The intriguing, multifaceted, and frequently overlooked period called the Middle Ages. Before we set off on this voyage, I suggest you take a brief pause to comment below on where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's one of the marvels of our contemporary era that we can link up over immense distances and different time zones while delving into history as a group. And if these serene wanderings through the annals of time appeal to you, I urge you to hit subscribe so you can unwind with some soothing historical narratives whenever you desire. For the moment, though, let's step away from the here and now and immerse ourselves in a completely distinct era and setting. Picture this. You awaken not in your cozy contemporary bed, but on a modest bed of straw in a modest, dimly illuminated chamber with coarsely carved stone walls. The atmosphere is chilly and thick with the aroma of wood smoke, soil, and maybe a touch of farm animals. The sole noise is the faint snap of a lone candle's flame, throwing flickering shadows across the surfaces. You could experience a brief wave of confusion, a feeling that things aren't as they should be. And truly, they're not. Somehow, via an odd turn of destiny or perhaps a dream, you've been whisked back to the medieval period. But don't worry, this isn't a bad dream, but a chance. A chance to live through an alternative lifestyle, to tread the paths walked by common folk and monarchs, to observe the victories and hardships that formed the society we recognize now, and all while staying snug and secure in your own sleeping space. Draw in a deep breath, allow your form to sink into the bedding, and permit your thoughts to wander backward, far back across the years to an age of fortresses and grand churches, of knightly honor and devastating epidemics, of profound belief and profound transformation. Our expedition starts in the rural areas of England, in a modest hamlet similar to many others scattered throughout the terrain during the Middle Ages. In this place, existence centers on the patterns of nature, the shift of seasons, the dawn and dusk, the perpetual loop of sowing and reaping. You discover yourself living as a peasant cultivator, part of the vast populace who labored from daybreak to nightfall to draw sustenance from the ground. Your routine commences prior to the initial glow of morning as you get up from your straw pallet to the cry of a rooster, a call that has resounded unchanged through the ages. You clothe yourself in basic attire, a coarsely woven shirt and pants, maybe adding a woolen wrap to fend off the early chill. Your initial duty is caring for the creatures, nourishing the hens that scratch at your heels, milking the goat that supplies vital nourishment for your household, and possibly yoking the massive ox that assists in tilling the soil. While performing your dawn duties, pause to inhale the essence of this uncomplicated pastoral existence, the earthy scent of the beasts, the fresh tang of the fodder, the refreshing moisture of the ground underfoot. These are the fragrances of a life intimately tied to the earth, one of diligent effort and basic delights. Once the animals are seen to, you head back to your tiny single-room dwelling where your kin are starting to rouse. As a group, you have a modest breakfast of oat gruel and day-old bread, chased with a mug of thin beer. The tastes are straightforward yet robust, providing energy for the extensive workday to come. As the sun ascends above the skyline, tinting the heavens in hues of rose and amber, You venture to the farmlands, prepared to undertake the exhausting toil that defines the medieval peasant's existence. Using your ox and plow, you furrow the fertile dark soil, readying it for seeding grains like wheat and barley, rye and oats, the essentials that will nourish you and your family during the lengthy winter season. The labor is demanding, and the hours stretch long. You sense the sun's heat on your shoulders, perspiration dripping down your brow, the soreness in your limbs as you urge yourself to match the plow's rhythm. Yet there is a particular fulfillment in this work, a feeling of intent and position in the broader order of existence. As a peasant, your existence isn't entirely yours. You are tied to the terrain and to the regional noble who possesses it, required to cultivate his lands and deliver a share of your yield in return for his safeguard. It's a basic pact, but one that structures the lives of countless individuals throughout medieval Europe. However, even within this modest way of life, there is space for aspirations and goals. While laboring in the fields, your thoughts might stray to the young lad dashing among the rows, chuckling as he pursues a butterfly or pretends to duel with a branch. Unbeknownst to you, this playful youngster, born into peasantry just like yourself, is fated for extraordinary achievements, for an ascent to authority that will influence the path of history itself. His name is William, and his narrative is among the most remarkable accounts from the Middle Ages. Emerging from poverty and orphaned early on, William's path takes an astonishing shift when a local noble takes him under his wing and appoints him as a squire. This is an uncommon prospect for a peasant youth, an opportunity to break free from the cycle of drudgery and subjugation that most endure. William grasps this opening eagerly. He picks up knowledge rapidly, mastering the skills of riding horses and wielding weapons, the nuances of polite behavior at court, and the tactics of warfare. He matures into an impressive young adult, tall and robust, with a sharp intellect and an innate command presence. His abilities attract notice. William draws the attention of the influential Duke of Normandy, who recognizes in him a similar drive, a figure of determination and shrewdness who might prove a useful partner. The Duke mentors William, bestows knighthood upon him, and awards him estates and honors of his own. It represents a staggering elevation for someone once a peasant, yet William is merely commencing his journey. He aims for an even loftier goal, the throne of England. By blending political strategy, calculated partnerships, and bold decisiveness, William establishes himself as a contender for the crown. And when the aging English monarch passes without an obvious successor, he claims his moment. In 1066, William assembles a massive force and sails over the English Channel, prepared to assert his right through combat and resolve. His invading army arrives on England's southern shore, where they confront the English troops under the newly crowned King Harold Godwinson. The scene is prepared for one of the most renowned conflicts in medieval annals, the Battle of Hastings. On a meadow close to a modest seaside settlement, the two forces engage in a fierce contest for a nation's destiny. The English prove formidable adversaries, valiant fighters defending their native soil. They create an unbreakable barrier of shields, their war axes and lances protruding like spines on a massive porcupine. For hours they stand strong against the assaults from the Norman horsemen, fending off assault after assault. But William is a clever leader, and he has a strategy prepared. He commands his riders to simulate a withdrawal, luring the English from their protected spots. Then, at the perfect instant, he turns his cavalry and launches an attack, crashing into the vulnerable English sides. It's a crushing maneuver, and it shifts the battle's momentum. By the close of the day, the ground is littered with fallen soldiers, and the English forces are retreating completely. King Harold is slain, felled by an arrow to the eye. William emerges triumphant, the English crown now securely in his possession. On Christmas Day, 1066, he is enthroned as king in Westminster Abbey, inaugurating a fresh period of Norman governance that will reshape the nation permanently. The Norman Conquest, as it becomes known, marks a pivotal point in English history. It introduces profound alterations to the nation's language, traditions, and systems of authority. French emerges as the tongue of the royal court and the upper class, while English is demoted to the dialect of ordinary people. The former Anglo-Saxon elite is displaced and supplanted by William's faithful Norman lords, who receive expansive areas of land to guarantee their fidelity. These lords quickly establish their fresh authority and status. Throughout the rural areas, the scenery starts to evolve as the Normans launch an extensive initiative of fortress construction. Motte and bailey castles emerge rapidly, like fungi following rain-large earthen hills, crowned with timber strongholds, encircled by deep trenches and robust fences. These initial castles are fairly basic designs, constructed primarily for utility rather than aesthetics. But as Norman dominance solidifies over time, they evolve into progressively grander and more intricate defenses. Stone supplants wood, and the quintessential medieval castle emerges, a lofty central tower encircled by sturdy outer walls with elevated turrets and crenellated parapets, all surrounded by a broad, deep ditch. For the Norman upper class, these castles serve as more than military bastions. They represent affluence and dominance, the tangible expression of their control over the subdued English populace. Inside their fortifications, the prominent nobles and their ladies enact the ceremonies and schemes of aristocratic existence, feasting lavishly in the main hall while being amused by musicians and jesters. Yet life within a medieval castle isn't solely about splendor and enjoyment. It is also a center of productivity and bustle, essentially a self-contained community. In the bailey, the smith's furnace radiates heat as he forges blades and protective gear, while arrow makers meticulously craft shafts and strings. Armed men practice in the courtyard, the sound of their training weapons clanging against the stone barriers. And during periods of conflict, the castle transforms into a sanctuary, a secure haven for aristocrats and commoners alike. When battle or disturbance looms, the drawbridge is lifted, the portcullis dropped, and the massive gates sealed, isolating the castle and its residents from external threats. However, the castle isn't the sole stronghold of influence and command in the medieval terrain. Equally striking, and in certain respects even more impactful, are the magnificent cathedrals and monasteries scattered across the countryside, towering tributes to the strength and majesty of the Catholic Church. In an era where religion forms the foundation of everyday life, the Church holds tremendous sway and authority. It acts as the protector of education and wisdom, the judge of ethics and fairness, the portal to redemption and everlasting existence. To remain in the Church's favor is to be in God's favor. The monasteries especially function as essential hubs of education and culture. Behind their secluded barriers, monks laboriously transcribe and adorn manuscripts, safeguarding the insights of ancient times and the doctrines of the Church. They also serve as financial power centers, with extensive estates tilled by peasants and serfs, yielding wool, grains, and other prized goods. For numerous individuals, the Church offers the primary route to learning and societal progress. Sons of aristocrats and affluent traders might be dispatched to monasteries to train as academics and religious figures, while daughters are sent to nunneries to learn feminine skills like sewing and domestic oversight. However, the Church isn't solely a benevolent entity. It can also inspire profound dread and irrational beliefs, acting as a strict and frequently unforgiving overseer. From the sermon stand, clerics denounce the vices of avarice, desire, and excess, cautioning about the perpetual agonies awaiting unrepentant wrongdoers in hell's flames. For some, this doctrine of redemption through hardship and self-restraint serves as an invitation to a nobler calling. The Benedictine monks, for instance, pledge vows of poverty, celibacy, and compliance, retreating from society into an existence of worship and reflection. They awaken before sunrise to recite the sacred services, devote their days to quiet learning and physical work, and withdraw to their austere quarters at night for a brief rest on a firm straw bed. But not every churchman is so restrained. The influential abbots and bishops frequently engage in secular matters as much as any worldly noble, participating in governance and negotiations, even commanding troops in combat to protect their territories and concerns. The distinction between religious and worldly authority often blurs, and the ongoing contest for dominance between church and state underlies much of medieval existence. This contest is nowhere more apparent than in the epic saga of the Crusades. In 1095, Pope Urban II delivers a summons to arms, encouraging Europe's knights to bear the cross and undertake a sacred quest to liberate Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim control. It is a resounding appeal that will resound through the ages, initiating a sequence of conflicts that will mold history's path. For the crusading knights, it represents an occasion for renown and redemption, a moment to demonstrate their bravery and devotion in combat. They affix the cross to their garments and shields and depart for the east, abandoning their homes and loved ones for the assurance of heavenly recompense. Yet the actuality of the Crusades diverges greatly from the lofty vision. The trek to the Holy Land is extended and hazardous, traversing unfriendly territories and perilous waters. Many fail to arrive, succumbing to illness, famine, or the blades of foes. And upon finally arriving in Jerusalem, they encounter a city already drenched in violence and grief. The Crusaders seized the sacred city in 1099, following a savage blockade that leaves the avenues flowing with the blood of the defeated. They found a series of Christian realms in the Levant, but maintaining this remote domain is an ongoing fight against a resolute Muslim adversary. Additional crusades ensue over the subsequent 2 centuries, each aiming to bolster the tenuous accomplishments of the prior one. For the inhabitants of the Holy Land, trapped amid the clashing sides, the Crusades bring an era of immense suffering and disruption. Settlements are torched, fields ravaged, blameless lives extinguished in the midst of sacred conflict. The roots of hostility between Christians and Muslims planted amid the fervor of warfare will sprout and flourish, yielding acrid outcomes for future generations. However, the Crusades yield unforeseen results as well. They introduce Europeans to the opulence and refinement of the East, to fresh concepts and perspectives that will contribute to igniting the profound intellectual and creative revival of the Renaissance. Crusaders return with seasonings, fabrics, and other unusual items, fueling the expansion of commerce and exchange. The once expansive and enigmatic world starts to contract. The boundaries of what is achievable broaden with every passing year. But for Europe's ordinary people, existence continues as a routine battle, a perpetual fight against starvation, sickness, and the whims of destiny. Even while history's major currents surge across the continent, the cadence of peasant life stays mostly unaltered, governed by seasonal changes and the soil's requirements until the arrival of the Black Death. In the 14th century, a fresh and horrifying menace arises from the Easter plague that spares no region of Europe. It commences as hearsay, murmurs of an odd affliction that fells both young and old, leaving whole metropolises filled with corpses. When the epidemic reaches in 1347, borne on vessels from the Crimea, it proliferates like a blaze. The illness is transmitted by fleas on rats, and it advances with alarming rapidity, jumping from harbor to harbor, settlement to settlement, trailing ruin behind. The signs are dreadful. High temperature and shivers, retching and loose bowels, the characteristic inflamed black swellings that name the scourge. Most infected perish within days. Their remains stack in the roadways, gathered by carts for the dead that traverse towns and hamlets. Terror and hopelessness seize the people. Some escape to rural areas, hoping to evade the infection. But the plague pursues them, wiping out entire families, entire communities. Others resort to irrational fears and blame-shifting, accusing Jews or sorcerers of the catastrophe. Still others view it as divine retribution, a heavenly judgment for humanity's transgressions. The fatalities are overwhelming. By the time the peak subsides, between a third and a half of Europe's inhabitants have died. Fields remain uncultivated due to lack of laborers. Whole settlements are forsaken to rodents and overgrowth. The societal and financial repercussions are deep and extensive. Following the plague, workers become rare. Peasants, once confined to the land, now have leverage to request higher pay and greater freedoms from their overlords. The ancient feudal structure starts to erode as serfs and freeholders alike pursue improved opportunities in urban centers. But the shadow of the plague isn't easily dispelled. It will recur in surges for centuries ahead, a stark warning of life's vulnerability in an uncaring cosmos. Even while Europe staggers from the Black Death's ravages, another major disaster emerges on the horizon. In France's undulating meadows and England's soggy pastures, two formidable nations are entangled in a contest for superiority that will engulf an entire era. The 100 Years' War, as it is later termed, stems from royal aspirations and patriotic fervor. It originates as a quarrel over the French throne, with England's King Edward III asserting his claim via his maternal lineage, but it swiftly intensifies into a fierce battle for land and sway as the two realms compete for mastery over the prosperous regions of Aquitaine and Normandy. The conflict is characterized by significant events. As the morning sunlight streams through the slim window of your hut, you stir to the distant crow of a rooster. The air is fresh and brisk, infused with the fragrance of wood smoke and moist soil. You extend your limbs and rise from your straw mat, your body sore from yesterday's exertions in the fields. Existence as a medieval peasant is challenging, but it's the only one you've ever experienced. Your days are governed by seasonal cycles and the expectations of your feudal master. You are merely a minor element in the vast hierarchical framework of medieval society, constrained by responsibility and custom. You rinse your face with chilly water from a wooden bowl and slip into a plain woolen shirt and trousers. There's no room for delay. Animals need feeding, crops require attention, and countless other chores demand your focus. You have a simple morning meal of stale bread and diluted ale, the basics of a peasant's diet. As you step onto the muddy path winding through your village, you're met by the sights and sounds of everyday medieval life. The blacksmith's hammer clangs as he works at his forge, forming iron into implements and shoes for horses. The baker retrieves loaves from his earthen oven, their scent drifting through the crisp dawn air. Children scamper among the wooden-framed homes, giggling and toying with rough-hewn wooden playthings. At the village's core stands the modest stone church, its bell ringing to signal prayer times. The church is the core of community life, offering not just spiritual direction, but also a refuge and a spot for communal assemblies. The local cleric is among the few who can read in the village, serving as a link to the broader world outside the estate. Beyond the village extend the long fields where you and your fellow peasants labor to grow food for survival and to fulfill rents and church dues to your lord. The work is grueling and incessant, but there's a certain gratification in nurturing life from the earth and seeing the crops flourish tall and robust beneath the summer sun. As you toil, you might swap news and rumors with your co-workers' discussions of the weather, the animals' well-being, the newest edicts from the Lord's residence. In a society where most folks live and die within a short distance of their birthplace, even minor bits of information from outside the village are treasured. Life is tough, but it has its modest pleasures and comforts. In the evenings, you could gather with kin and companions by the fireside, sharing tales and tunes inherited through the years. On sacred days and celebrations, there's melody and dance, an opportunity to pause the daily grind and honor the seasonal shifts. But even during your routine activities, you can't ignore the indicators of the strict social hierarchy that organizes medieval life. Signs of the nobility's and church's power and riches are everywhere, in the splendid manor residences and monasteries dotting the scenery, in the elegant garments and lavish meals savored by the elite, in the deference and respect required by those of higher standing. And yet, transformation is approaching the medieval realm, even if it's not yet evident to those experiencing it. Fresh ideas and innovations are circulating, undermining old assurances. The expansion of towns and commerce is fostering a new middle class, one that will contest the conventional order. The plague that sporadically ravages the land, causing devastation, also weakens feudal ties as labor grows scarce and peasants acquire some negotiating strength. But for the present, as you work the fields and carry out your life in your village's narrow confines, the medieval system stays firm. Your role within it is set, your duties and commitments clear. You form a link in a vast chain of existence, connecting the ground to the skies, the earthly to the divine. As the sun dips over the fields, you head back to your hut, your body fatigued, but your spirit content. You've endured another day in the medieval world, a realm of difficulty and effort, but also of fellowship and heritage. As you drift into sleep on your straw mat, you envision a world outside your village's limits, a realm of fortresses and grand churches, of knights and ladies, of excitement and splendor. But for now, that realm stays just beyond grasp, a glimmering image in your mind's twilight. The following day offers more of the familiar, the unending sequence of planting and gathering, of looking after animals and repairing barriers. But even amid this daily routine, there are instances of loveliness and elegance. The peal of the church bell resounding across the fields, summoning the devout to worship. The view of a hawk soaring high above, outlined against a clear azure sky. The merriment of children frolicking in the village center, their voices rebounding off the timber-framed dwellings. And, invariably, there are the narrative's accounts of noble heroes and sacred figures, of wonders and marvels transmitted from one generation to the next. In a society where most cannot read or write, these narratives are the essence of culture, the bonds that unite the community. You might listen to stories of the legendary King Arthur and his Round Table Knights, safeguarding the kingdom from evil forces, or of the holy King Edward the Confessor, who could heal scrofula with a touch, or of the valiant knights who journeyed to the Holy Land on crusade, aiming to reclaim Jerusalem for Christendom. These narratives provide a peek into a broader world beyond the village's borders, a realm of grand exploits and honorable actions. They motivate and elevate, reminding you that even the most humble peasant can aim for excellence through devotion and bravery. But the stories also fulfill another function to strengthen the social structure and the principles that support it. The accounts of gallant knights and virtuous ladies, of sagacious kings and pious saints, all help to reinforce the hierarchy of medieval society, making it appear innate and divinely ordained. And thus, you heed these stories, internalizing their teachings and ethics even as you perform your daily chores. They integrate into the texture of your life, forming your perception of the world and your position in it. As days become weeks and weeks become months, the patterns of medieval life persist in their timeless loop. The seasons transition from spring's tender greens to autumn's vibrant golds. Infants arrive and elders depart. The immense cycle of life revolves onward, and amid it all, the land persists. The fields and woods, the streams and hills that have supported generations of peasants like you. It is a demanding life, one of labor and conflict. But it is also a life profoundly anchored in the soil, in nature's eternal designs. In times of serene contemplation, you might reflect on the enigmas of existence, the profound queries that have perplexed humankind since time's beginning. What is life's aim? What awaits beyond death's threshold? How can one lead a virtuous and upright life in a world brimming with pain and inequity? The Church provides responses to these inquiries, though they aren't always fulfilling. The clerics speak of the necessity for belief and submission, for embracing one's fate in life. They vow heavenly rewards for those who adhere to Christ's doctrines. But the paradise they depict feels distant from peasant life's everyday truths. And yet, there is solace in the Church's ceremonies and rhythms, the solemn liturgy, the twinkling candles, the aroma of incense. In a world that can frequently appear cruel and erratic, the Church offers a degree of constancy and continuity, a connection to a superior force and a loftier intent. And so you persist, day after day, season after season, living beneath the medieval order's shadow. You wed and raise your own offspring, conveying the abilities and insights of your forebears. You endure life's tempests, the poor harvests and disease outbreaks, the minor tyrannies of your feudal superiors. Through everything, you cling to the values that have upheld your people for ages. The principles of diligence and endurance, of fidelity and community, of belief and resilience. These are the values that have allowed peasants like you to persist through centuries of adversity, to forge a living from medieval Europe's unyielding soil. And as you recline on your deathbed, encircled by your children and grandchildren, you can reflect on a life well spent, a life of modest duty and quiet honor. You may not have attained renown or riches, but you have fulfilled your role in medieval life's grand mosaic, contributing your own modest strand to the immense and detailed pattern. As you shut your eyes for the ultimate time, you can find solace in knowing that the world will persist without you, that the fields will still be furrowed and the prayers still uttered, that the stories will still be recounted and the songs still performed. For ultimately, it is not the person that counts, but the collective, the vast chain of existence that connects the humblest peasant to the most powerful king, the living to the departed, the earthly to the eternal. And so you fade away, your spirit ascending to the vast beyond, relinquishing the mortal realm's worries and pains. You have lived and loved, struggled and prevailed, and now you can repose in the tranquility of the eras, assured that your life, no matter how modest, has been an element of something grander, a small yet essential thread in humanity's vast tapestry. As years evolve into decades and decades into centuries, the medieval world you knew gradually diminishes, yielding to fresh periods and novel modes of thought. But that world's heritage endures in the stones of the grand cathedrals and castles, in the verses of poets and thinkers, in the principles and customs that still influence our world today. And through everything, the land remains, the fields and forests, the rivers and hills that have observed the ascent and decline of innumerable generations. It serves as a prompt of human life's transience, of the immense cycles of birth and death, growth and decay that rule the natural realm. But it also reminds us of the human spirit's lasting strength, of ordinary people's capacity to confront their era's trials with bravery and poise, to discover significance and intent even in the toughest situations. As we reflect on the medieval world from our current perspective, we can perceive it in all its intricacy and contradiction, a realm of profound beauty and profound savagery, of monumental accomplishments and dreadful injustices. But we can also view it as a realm of profound humanity, where individuals like you lived and loved, dreamed and despaired, much as we do now. And so, as you drift into sleep, let your thoughts roam back to that remote time and place, to medieval Europe's fields and villages. Let yourself envision the lives of peasants and nobles, priests and artisans, all enacting their roles in humanity's grand drama. And as you do, find comfort in knowing that your own life, however minor and unremarkable it may appear, is also part of that grand narrative, a thread in the tapestry of human experience that extends back to time's dawn and onward into the unknown future. For ultimately, that is the medieval world's great teaching, that each of us, regardless of our status or situation, has a part to play in history's unfolding. That each of us is summoned to live purposefully and meaningfully, to pursue something beyond ourselves. And so, as you enter the domain of dreams, let the age's wisdom direct your course. Let the past's echoes murmur in your ear. And know that even in the bleakest times, there is always hope, always the chance for a brighter dawn. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams overflow with the medieval world's marvels, with the human spirit's courage and endurance that has persisted through the centuries. May you arise revitalized and restored, prepared to confront your own era's challenges with the same elegance and strength as those who preceded you. And may you always recall that no matter how small and insignificant you may feel, you are part of something greater, a link in the great chain of being that unites us all across the ages and around the world. Sleep well, and may the medieval world's blessings accompany you forever. The tale of King William's ascent is evidence of social mobility's fluid character in the medieval period, even within the feudal system's rigid structure. Born a peasant, William's existence shifted dramatically when a local lord spotted his promise and integrated him into his household as a squire. Under the lord's tutelage, William mastered warfare and governance, refining his abilities in riding, combat with swords, and command. His innate talents and keen intelligence captured the notice of the mighty Duke of Normandy, who ultimately took William into his employ and knighted him. William's climb through the Norman nobility's ranks was swift. He soon became one of the Duke's most reliable counselors, showing sharp political insight and unyielding resolve to thrive. When the elderly Duke died without a clear successor, William recognized his opportunity to grasp power. Through a mix of negotiation, incentives, and pure determination, William outwitted his competitors and gained the backing of crucial Norman aristocrats. He was enthroned as Duke of Normandy in 1035 at merely 20 years old. But William's aspirations didn't halt there. He had long thought he possessed a claim to England's throne through his remote kinship to the heirless King Edward the Confessor. When Edward died in 1066, William viewed his chance to turn that claim real. Assembling a huge army and navy, William initiated a bold invasion of England, landing on the south coast and advancing toward London. His route was obstructed by the English king Harold Godwinson, who had recently claimed the throne himself. The two armies confronted each other at the Battle of Hastings, a crucial juncture in English history. The battle was prolonged and bloody, with the English battling courageously but ultimately succumbing to the superior Norman horsemen and bowmen. King Harold was slain, reportedly by an arrow piercing his eye, and English opposition collapsed. William's triumph at Hastings signaled the start of a new chapter in English history. He was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day, 1066, adopting the title William the Conqueror. As monarch, William proceeded to solidify his authority and remodel English society according to Norman patterns. He allocated lands and titles to his devoted Norman supporters, ousting the old Anglo-Saxon nobility. He ordered a comprehensive assessment of the kingdom called the Domesday Book to evaluate its riches and assets. and he initiated a vast program of castle erection to secure his reign and quell any possible revolt. But William's rule wasn't without difficulties. He encountered repeated insurrections from discontented English nobles, along with invasions from the Scots and Welsh. He grappled with reconciling the conflicting needs of his Norman and English subjects, and merging the two cultures into a unified entity. Through it all, though, William stayed a formidable and capable sovereign, renowned for his martial skill, his political astuteness, and his intense resolve. He bequeathed a lasting imprint on English history, altering the nation's language, laws, and establishments, and paving the way for centuries of Norman dominion. The account of William the Conqueror serves as a prompt of the intricate interaction between personal initiative and historical dynamics that molded the medieval world. It is a narrative of drive and subjugation, of a lowly peasant's rise to power's pinnacles and sway. But it is also a narrative of history's great currents, of cultures clashing and new identities forming, of one life's lasting effect on human affairs' course. And so, as you drift into sleep, let your thoughts dwell on William's image, the peasant become king, leading his Norman troops, his standard waving high over England's fields. Let his tale remind you of the potential for excellence within everyone, regardless of modest origins, and of the human will's power to mold the surrounding world. Good night, and may William the Conqueror's spirit steer your dreams and motivate you to claim your destiny with the same bravery and resolve he displayed on medieval Europe's battlegrounds. May you rise with refreshed purpose and opportunity, prepared to leave your own imprint on humanity's grand tapestry. Sleep well, and may the medieval world's blessings be with you forever. The Renaissance is emerging as you rest your tired head for sleep. The medieval world is starting to awaken with fresh concepts, new potentials. But for most, everyday life stays a known pattern of labor and basic joys. You are an artisan in a lively town, rising with the sun to commence your tasks. The avenues are already teeming with movement as you proceed to your workspace. Bakers extract steaming breads from their ovens, the smell of fresh loaves blending with the odor of open drains. Vendors shout their goods, fresh seafood, mature cheeses, freshly colored fabrics in bright shades. In your workshop, you apply yourself to your craft, deftly shaping wood or forging metal. Perhaps you're a woodworker, building solid furnishings and beams for the new homes emerging as the town expands. Or maybe a metal worker, your forge emitting warmth as you pound out tools, horseshoes, and occasionally a blade or chest plate for the local lord soldiers. Your trade is your source of income and your source of pride. You acquired it from your father, as he did from his expertise handed down across generations. Your creations are in demand at the town market and farther afield. Traders transport them to remote cities and even overseas. A fine table you crafted adorns the hall of the nearby manor. As you labor, town life swirls around you. The pealing of church bells signals prayer hours. A line of monks passes, intoning in Latin. In the town plaza, a jester amuses a gathering with ribald humor and sleight of hand, his colorful attire a burst of hue against the half-timbered buildings. From time to time, excitement sweeps the town. A wandering trader arrives, his carts loaded with exotic spices, shimmering silks, odd mechanical contraptions. He conveys news as well, of conflicts in distant lands, the newest styles at the royal court, of a fresh form of scholarship stirring in the academies. Some of these novel notions seep into your workshop. A knowledgeable patron asks for a classical design etched into his bookshelf. A painter acquaintance experiments with perspective principles, producing remarkably lifelike images. A globe-trotting trader recounts the water-powered devices he observed in Arab territories, igniting your creativity. But mostly, your worries are more pressing. Will you complete the large commission before the fair? Will your son demonstrate the same aptitude for the craft as you anticipate? Will the earnings suffice to provide meat for the table and fuel for the hearth? The cadence of your days is directed by your trade's demands and your family's needs. In the evenings, you convene at the town inn, exchanging tales and updates with fellow artisans over a tankard of ale. The concerns of monarchs and pontiffs feel remote, though you faithfully pray for their spirits and pay your dues. Your world is here, in the town you've known your entire life, in the labor of your hands and the countenances of your dear ones. As darkness falls, you make your way home, the streets growing quiet as windows are shuttered and lights doused. In your small yet orderly home, you partake in a basic meal with your family, a stew of vegetables and barley, a chunk of bread, perhaps some cheese or sausage. You express gratitude for the day's gifts, for your hand's skill and your kin's affection. Later, in your bedchamber's obscurity, you ponder the day and those ahead. Your life isn't simple. There are constant hurdles, constant unknowns, but it is one of purpose and pride, molded by your craft's traditions and your community's ties. As you drift into sleep, the soft respiration of your loved ones nearby, you envision the tasks you'll tackle tomorrow, and in the days following of the items you'll create, the stories you'll share, the life you'll construct. One day at a time in this world, gradually yet certainly altering around you. The Renaissance is approaching with all its upheaval and magnificence, but for this instant, there is tranquility. The tranquility of a task well executed, a family well cherished, a place in the world, however humble, that belongs to you. It's a tranquility earned through generations past, a tranquility you'll transmit to those who follow. So repose now, artisan of the Middle Ages. Repose and envision a world concluding and a world yet to emerge. The dawn will arrive, as it invariably does, and with it another day to leave your mark, however minor, on history's pages. Sleep as your forebears slept, and your offspring will sleep beneath the same stars, dreaming the same dreams, the eternal human dream of a life lived with significance, with expertise, with affection, the dream that propels us through the eras, from the remote past to the uncertain future, the dream that unites us all ultimately, regardless of time or location, the dream of home, of purpose, of peace. Good night, dear craftsman. Good night and pleasant dreams as the medieval world gently transitions into the Renaissance and history's cycle turns relentlessly through the long, silent night. And so we depart from you, drifting softly into sleep's awaiting arms as the medieval town's gentle noises recede into the distance. The crowd's murmur, the blacksmith's hammer clang, the crier's call all dissolve into night's hush. In their stead, history's timeless lullaby murmurs through the shadows, the soft steps of prior generations, the gentle breath of those yet to arrive, all participating in time's infinite dance, rising and falling like tides, like the moon's phases. And through everything, the human spirit persists, steadfast as the northern star, the spirit of invention, of fellowship, of optimism. The spirit that erected the cathedrals and castles, that adorned the manuscripts and stained glass. The spirit that envisioned a superior world even in the gloomiest times. That spirit resides in you, dear listener. As you enter the domain of dreams, it links you to the artisan in his workshop, to the monk in his scriptorium, to the peasant in his field, to all who preceded and all who will succeed. So let that bond soothe you as you float into sleep's serene void. Let it assure you that you belong to something grander, something lasting. That your narrative, however modest it may appear, is interlaced into humanity's grand tapestry. And let it grant you fortitude to confront your own eras and life's challenges, the fortitude to construct, to invent, to envision, to imprint your own mark on the world, however unassuming, however transient. For that is the teaching of the medieval craftsman and of all who came before and after him, that every life, every instant holds meaning. That each of us has a role to fulfill, a contribution to offer in humanity's great unfolding tale. So fulfill your role, dear listener, with expertise and affection. Erect your own cathedrals, whether of stone or spirit. Adorn your own manuscripts with your unique perspective's light, and when night arrives, as it must for everyone, rest content knowing you have lived and loved and left an imprint, that you have been part of the human narrative in all its grief and all its splendor. Good night, dear time traveler. Good night. And may your dreams brim with the age's wonders and the serene satisfaction of a life well lived. May you rise to a world slightly brighter due to your presence, slightly richer due to your offerings. And may the medieval craftsman's workshop echoes, and those of all history's workshops and workers, resound softly in your resting ears, a gentle prompt of creation and rest's endless cycle of labor and peace that signifies time's great wheel turning. Sleep now and dream. Dream of eras past and eras forthcoming. Dream of the human spirit's boundless potentials and of your own cherished spot in history's vast unfolding tapestry. Good night and sweet dreams until dawn returns, and living's great task recommences anew. The sun ascends over the medieval terrain, casting elongated shadows from a grand cathedral's towering spires. The edifice appears to extend to the skies, a tribute to the church's might and influence in this period. As you near, you catch the faint intonations of monks emanating from inside, their voices elevated in an unending prayer cycle. You enter, and the external world's commotion dissipates, supplanted by a transcendent calm. Light sifts through elaborate stained glass panes, coloring the stone floor in a spectrum of hues. The air is dense with incense and candle flames. This is beyond a mere worship site. It is the community's pulsing core. The cathedral functions not only as a spiritual hub, but also as a venue for education, benevolence, and even trade. In the main aisle, the destitute queue for aid, receiving bread and currency from the church's reserves. In the cloisters, youthful scholars scrutinize valuable manuscripts, absorbing ancient wisdom. But the church's reach extends well beyond these confines. In this age, the boundary between worldly and holy authority is indistinct. Bishops and abbots exercise vast influence, frequently advising kings and nobles. They possess extensive lands, supervising farms and villages. Some even command armies in battle, the cross emblazoned on their shields. The Church safeguards knowledge and education. In monasteries throughout Europe, monks toil to duplicate and embellish manuscripts, conserving classical authors' works and church patriarchs' teachings. These are the Renaissance's seeds, poised to germinate, but the Church also fosters fear and superstition. From the pulpit, preachers condemn sin and heresy, menacing eternal condemnation for strayers. The Inquisition pursues those suspected of straying from church teachings. In an age of epidemics and wars, salvation's promise is a potent instrument. As you venture deeper into the cathedral, you reach a small side chapel. Inside, a solitary monk kneels in prayer, his garb dusty from travel. This is Francis of Assisi, a man who will embody a fresh ideal of Christian commitment. Born into an affluent Italian family, Francis relished a youth of privilege and indulgence. But encounters with mendicants and lepers sparked a spiritual epiphany. He forsook his material possessions and vowed poverty, committing to a life of modesty and aid. Francis proclaimed a message of love and empathy, perceiving the divine in all creation. He pacified a wolf terrorizing a village, viewing it as kin. He penned odes to the sun and moon, lauding them as God's creations. His model inspired multitudes to join him, forming the Franciscan order. They roamed the countryside, preaching to the impoverished and caring for the ill. They represented a new spirituality paradigm, grounded in humility, charity, and direct divine connection. Francis's heritage endured long past his demise. His unadorned piety and nature love influenced diverse figures like Dante and Gandhi. In a period of religious division and corruption, he provided a route back to Christianity's core message. As you observe Francis pray, absorbed in quiet meditation, a wave of peace envelops you. In a world of perpetual strife and turmoil, his compassion and humility message shines like a beacon of hope. But the moment's serenity shatters with sudden uproar outside. Yells and hoof clatter fill the air. You hurry to the cathedral entrance to witness a panting messenger stumble in, his face pale. "The king is dead," he exclaims. "Long live the king. The old sovereign has passed, and a new one must ascend. In the days ahead, lords and bishops will assemble to offer homage and pledge allegiance." But in the shadows, others conspire, spotting chances and powers shift. Medieval life's great wheel revolves on birth and death, war and peace, aligning with seasons' eternal rhythms. As you step back into the sunlight, centuries' weight presses upon you, the innumerable lives preceding, each imprinting history's tapestry. The road extends ahead, meandering through fields and forests, toward castles and strongholds, villages and towns. More stories await telling, more faces to encounter, merchants and minstrels, knights and serfs, all enacting their roles in the Middle Ages' grand drama. But for now, sleep tugs at you, the past's dream dissolving into your bed's soft warmth. The medieval world sounds, the church bells toll, the blacksmith's hammer clang, children's playful laughter, all blend and melt into a calming ambient hum. As you drift off, history's faces swirl through your mind. William the Conqueror on his steed, Francis of Assisi amid birds, Joan of Arc in gleaming armor. They form the human story's rich fabric, the ceaseless pursuit of meaning and bonds in an unpredictable world. And while their era may be long vanished, lost to time's mists, Their narratives persist, murmuring across centuries. In dreams, we walk beside them, sharing triumphs and struggles, joys and sorrows. So let us dream together, you and I, roaming the medieval world's winding trails. Let us heed the past's voices and discover echoes of our own aspirations and anxieties. And let us rise in the morning with fresh regard for the long, twisting path leading us here today. Good night, dear dreamer. May your rest abound with visions of castles and cathedrals, of valiant knights and wise monarchs. May you find in past stories a guide for steering the present. And may you always remember you are part of humanity's great tale, a narrative still being penned page by page, day by day. The medieval world fades now like a tapestry softly folded and stored. But it will await your return in dreams and imagination's realm. So sleep now and dream of bygone days, of a world both simpler and more intricate, more harsh and more exquisite. Sleep and let history's lullaby transport you to rest and peace. Good night. You blink awake in an unfamiliar, dimly lit spot. As your vision adjusts, you realize you're no longer in your bedroom, but somewhere entirely different. A flickering candle lights roughly hewn stone walls. You're reclining on a mattress stuffed with straw. The air carries scents of wood smoke, animals, and earth. Somehow you've awakened in medieval times. Relax back into the straw mattress as we embark on a calming journey through this bygone era, walking in the footsteps of kings, peasants, merchants, and monks. Let the rich tapestry of medieval life gently unfold as you drift off to a deep slumber. You have awoken as a peasant farmer in a small English village. It's just before dawn, and the rooster crows, same as it has for hundreds of years. You rise from your modest straw bed and pull on a simply spun tunic and breeches. The first order of the day is tending to the animals, feeding the chickens, goats, and enormous ox you use to pull the plow. The smells of hay, manure, and earth fill the air. You then join your family for a simple breakfast of barley porridge and stale bread in your small one-room cottage. The flavors are plain but hearty. As the sun rises, you head out to the fields to begin a long day of back-breaking labor, plowing, planting, and harvesting crops of wheat, barley, and rye. The work is arduous, but there is a certain peace in the rhythm of the seasons. Your life is modest, but you take pride in working the land for the local lord in exchange for protection. Little do you know, one young peasant boy running through these same fields will rise to become one of the most transformative kings in English history. That young boy's name is William. Born a peasant, through a remarkable turn of events, he finds himself in the care of a local lord who takes him on as a squire. William takes to his new role with vigor, learning the arts of horsemanship, swordsmanship, and leadership. He catches the eye of the powerful Duke of Normandy, who eventually knights him. Through his wits, bravery, and a good deal of ruthlessness, William works his way into the Duke's inner circle. When the old Duke dies, William outmaneuvers other claimants to seize control of Normandy. But William has his eye on an even greater prize, the English throne, which he believes is his birthright. In 1066, he launches a daring invasion, leading to one of the most famous battles in medieval history. Tens of thousands of soldiers clash on a field near the small coastal village of Hastings. The Anglo-Saxons, wielding battle axes and forming an impenetrable shield wall, face off against the mounted Norman knights in a bloody day-long battle. William uses a fake retreat to draw the Anglo-Saxons out. Then his cavalry charges, cutting them down. By day's end, the Anglo-Saxon king is dead, his army destroyed. William is crowned King of England on Christmas Day 1066 in Westminster Abbey, ushering in a new era. The Norman Conquest will transform England, reshaping its language, customs, and aristocracy. French becomes the language of the court. William distributes lands to his loyal Norman barons, uprooting the Anglo-Saxon power structures. These barons build grand castles across the countryside, asserting Norman power. After William's conquest, castle building explodes across England as the new Norman elite solidify their rule. Motte and Bailey castles spring up, earthen mounds topped with wooden keeps surrounded by ditches and palisades. Over centuries, these wooden structures give way to ever larger, more elaborate stone fortresses. The classic medieval castles of storybooks with soaring towers, crenellated battlements, moats, and drawbridges. Inside their thick stone walls, the great lords and ladies play out the dramas and intrigues of courtly life. Alliances are forged and broken over sumptuous feasts in the great hall. Minstrels and jesters entertain while the lords plot wars and jockey for royal favor. Down in the bailey, a blacksmith hammers out swords and armor. Fletchers make arrows and men-at-arms train for battle, the sounds of clashing steel echoing off the walls. Castles are symbols of wealth and power, but also refuge for nobles and commoners alike in times of trouble. The castle isn't the only dominant structure on the medieval landscape. Soaring cathedrals and monasteries also rise across Europe, asserting the power and influence of the Catholic Church. Monasteries serve as centers of learning where monks painstakingly copy and illuminate manuscripts, preserving classical knowledge. They are also economic powerhouses with vast landholdings worked by peasants. For many, the Church provides education, charity, and the promise of eternal salvation. But it also instills the fear of sin and damnation. Preachers rail against greed, lust, and gluttony. Some, like the Benedictine monks, withdraw from the world into a life of prayer, chastity, and poverty. Others, like the powerful abbots and bishops, engage in worldly politics and even lead armies into battle. The line between secular and sacred power is blurry. Kings and popes vie for supremacy. Holy wars are launched to reclaim Jerusalem. In 1095, Pope Urban II calls on the Knights of Europe to embark on a holy mission to free Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Thousands take up the cross, sewing it onto their garments as a sign of devotion. The Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099 in a bloody struggle, establishing Christian kingdoms in the Levant. But holding this distant territory is a constant battle. More crusades follow over the next 2 centuries. For the crusading knights, it's a chance for glory, adventure, and salvation. But it's also a brutal, bloody conflict that sows seeds of religious enmity between Christians and Muslims. The Crusades also expose Europeans to the riches and sophistication of the East. They bring back spices, silks, and new ideas that will help fuel the Renaissance. But for now, life remains a daily struggle for most, even as great change looms on the horizon. Among the crusading knights who journeyed to the Holy Land was a young French noble named Louis. Born into a family of minor nobility, Louis was always a deeply pious child. As a youth, he spent hours in prayer and devotion, much to his father's dismay, who wanted him to focus on the arts of warfare and statesmanship. But when Pope Urban's call for the First Crusade reached their castle, Louis knew his destiny had arrived. Against his father's wishes, he took the cross and set out for Jerusalem, leaving behind his young wife and infant son. The journey was long and perilous. Louis saw many of his fellow knights succumb to disease, starvation, and the swords of the Seljuk Turks, but his faith never wavered. He believed utterly in the righteousness of their cause. When the Crusaders finally reached Jerusalem and breached its walls, Louis was among the first to enter the city. The slaughter that followed was terrible, with the Crusaders killing thousands of Muslim and Jewish inhabitants. Louis himself took no part in the bloodshed. Instead, he fell to his knees in prayer at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. With Jerusalem secured, Louis resolved to stay and defend the newly established Kingdom of Jerusalem. He sent word to his wife to join him, which she did, making the long journey with their young son and a retinue of servants. For several years, Louis and his family lived in Jerusalem. With Louis serving as a knight in the service of King Baldwin II, he fought in several battles against the surrounding Muslim states, always distinguishing himself with his bravery and skill at arms. But the life of a crusader was a hard one, filled with constant warfare and the ever-present specter of death. Louis saw many of his comrades fall in battle or succumb to the harsh conditions. His own wife fell ill and died, leaving him to care for their son alone. As the years wore on, Louis began to question the very nature of the Crusades. He had come to the Holy Land to defend Christianity, but the constant violence and bloodshed seemed antithetical to the teachings of Christ. He saw the way the Crusaders treated the local Muslim and Jewish populations, and it troubled his conscience. In 1120, after nearly 2 decades in the Holy Land, Louis made the difficult decision to return to France. He left his son, now a young man, to continue serving in the Crusade states and began the long journey home. The France that Louis returned to was much changed from the one he had left. In his absence, his father and elder brothers had died, leaving Louis as the unexpected heir to the family lands. He found his domain impoverished and in disarray, with rival nobles encroaching on his territory. But Louis had learned much during his time in the East. He applied the skills of leadership and diplomacy he had honed as a Crusader knight to governing his lands. Slowly but surely, he began to restore order and prosperity. He also brought back with him a newfound appreciation for learning and culture in the Holy Land. He had encountered the rich traditions of Muslim and Byzantine scholarship, and he was determined to bring some of that knowledge back to France. He invited scholars and artisans to his court, establishing a library and a school. He commissioned translations of Arabic and Greek texts into Latin, helping to spur the intellectual revival that would lead to the Renaissance. Louis also worked to improve the lot of the peasants who worked his lands. Having seen firsthand the suffering and privation that was so common in the medieval world, he tried to be a just and compassionate lord. He reduced taxes, improved infrastructure, and established a system of courts to settle disputes fairly. As he grew older, Louis increasingly turned his thoughts to matters of the spirit. The violence and brutality he had witnessed during the Crusades weighed heavily on his mind. He came to believe that true Christian devotion was to be found not in warfare and conquest, but in peace, charity, and the cultivation of knowledge. In his later years, Louis retired to a monastery where he spent his days in prayer and contemplation. He died there in 1148 at the age of 68, surrounded by the monks he had come to consider his brothers. Louis's legacy was a complex one. He had been a brave and skilled knight, an able administrator, and a patron of learning. But he had also participated in one of the most brutal and misguided enterprises in medieval history. In the end, perhaps his greatest contribution was the example he set in his later years, that of a man who had seen the worst of what the world had to offer and had chosen to respond with compassion, wisdom, and a commitment to peace. As you drift off to sleep, let your mind linger on the figure of Louis, a man who journeyed from the fields of France to the walls of Jerusalem and back again, and whose life was a testament to the enduring human struggle to find meaning and goodness in a turbulent world. But the medieval world was one of constant change and upheaval, where even the mightiest could be brought low by the turning of fortune's wheel. And as the 12th century gave way to the 13th, a new power was rising in the East that would once again set the stage for conflict and transformation. In the early 13th century, a young man named Temujin was rising to power on the steppes of Central Asia. Born into a clan of nomadic Mongol herders, Temujin's early life was marked by hardship and struggle. His father was murdered when Temujin was still a boy, and his family was abandoned by their clan to die on the harsh steppe. But Temujin survived, and through a combination of strategic alliances, military prowess, and sheer ruthlessness, he began to unite the disparate Mongol tribes under his rule. In 1206, at a gathering of Mongol chiefs, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler of the Mongol peoples. Under Genghis Khan's leadership, the Mongols embarked on a series of conquests that would create the largest contiguous empire in world history. With their unparalleled skills in horsemanship and archery, their ability to travel vast distances quickly, and their brutal tactics of siege and psychological warfare, the Mongols proved unstoppable. They swept through Central Asia, conquering the Turkic states and the Persian Empire. They invaded China, capturing Beijing in 1215 and establishing the Yuan dynasty. They pushed into Russia and Eastern Europe, their cavalry reaching the banks of the Danube. To the people of medieval Europe, the Mongols were a terrifying and alien force, seeming to appear out of nowhere to wreak destruction and slaughter. Tales of their brutality spread far and wide, of pyramids built from the skulls of the vanquished, of whole cities put to the sword, of prisoners used as human shields in battle. But the Mongols were also known for their religious tolerance, their efficient system of governance, and their promotion of trade and cultural exchange along the Silk Road. Under Mongol rule, the Silk Road became a conduit not just for goods, but for ideas, technologies, and artistic styles, linking Europe and Asia more closely than ever before. As Genghis Khan's empire expanded, it began to strain under its own size and diversity. After his death in 1227, the empire was divided among his sons and grandsons, who continued to expand Mongol rule, but also fought amongst themselves for power. It was one of these grandsons, Hulagu, who would come to pose the greatest threat to the medieval Islamic world. In 1258, Hulagu's forces captured Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, slaughtering tens of thousands and bringing an end to the Islamic Golden Age. The fall of Baghdad sent shockwaves throughout the Muslim world. It marked a decisive shift in power from the Arab heartlands to the Mongol-ruled lands of Persia and Central Asia. It also opened the door for a new power to emerge in the region, the Mamluks of Egypt, who would defeat the Mongols in battle and establish themselves as the dominant force in the Islamic world. For the people of medieval Europe, the Mongol invasions were a source of both terror and fascination. The Mongols were seen as a scourge sent by God to punish the sinful, a people of Magog who heralded the end times. But they were also admired for their military prowess and their exotic ways. European envoys, missionaries, and merchants ventured to the Mongol court, bringing back tales of the Khan's vast riches, his magnificent palaces, and the strange customs of his people. The Mongols, for their part, showed an interest in European culture and religion, with some Mongol princesses even marrying into European royal families. But the Mongol Empire was ultimately to be a fleeting one. By the 14th century, it had fragmented into competing khanates, which in turn fell to the rising powers of the Russians, the Chinese, and the Ottomans. The legacy of the Mongols, however, would endure. They had shaken the foundations of the medieval world, accelerating the pace of change and exchange across Eurasia. They had shown the power of the steppe peoples to shape the course of history, a power that would be echoed in later centuries by the Timurids, the Ottomans, and the Mughals. And they had left an indelible mark on the European imagination as a symbol of the strange and terrible forces that lurked beyond the edges of the known world. As you drift deeper into sleep, let your mind wander across the vast steppes of Central Asia, where the thunder of hoofbeats and the whistle of arrows once heralded the coming of the Mongol hordes. And remember that even the mightiest of empires are but fleeting things, subject to the inexorable tides of history. For even as the Mongols reshaped the world of the 13th century, other forces were stirring that would define the final centuries of the Middle Ages, forces of plague and rebirth, of faith and reason, of discovery and transformation. In the 14th century, a devastating pandemic sweeps across Europe, the Black Death. It starts with rumors from the east of a terrible pestilence that leaves piles of dead in its wake. The disease arrives in 1347 on ships from Crimea. It spreads rapidly, carried by fleas on rats. People flee the cities, but the plague follows them. The symptoms are horrific: fever, chills, vomiting, and swollen black buboes. Most die within days. Panic and despair grip the populace. Some blame Jews or witches. Others see it as divine punishment. The death toll is staggering. Between 1/3 to 1/2 of Europe's population perishes. Fields lie fallow. Towns are abandoned. The social and economic impacts are profound. In the aftermath, labor is scarce. Peasants demand better wages and more rights, sowing the seeds for the end of serfdom. The plague will recur in waves for centuries, a grim specter haunting the medieval world. One of those who lived through the first terrible wave of the Black Death was a young Italian man named Giovanni. Born into a family of wealthy Florentine merchants, Giovanni had always been a precocious child with a quick mind and an insatiable curiosity about the world. When the plague struck Florence in 1348, Giovanni was just 18 years old. He watched in horror as the disease ravaged his city, claiming the lives of his friends, his neighbors, and finally his own parents and siblings. Bereft and alone, Giovanni threw himself into his studies as a way to cope with his grief. As the sun sets on another day in the medieval world, the bustling streets and fields grow quiet. farmers and craftsmen return to their humble homes, while nobles retire to their grand chambers high in the castle keeps. In a small thatched roof cottage, a family gathers around the hearth for the evening meal. The fire crackles, casting a warm glow over their faces as they break bread and share a simple stew of vegetables and barley. The father, a weathered peasant with calloused hands, says a brief prayer of thanks for the food and for another day of life and health. After the meal, the children settle in for a story before bed. The mother, a kind-faced woman with a melodic voice, begins to tell a tale passed down through generations. It's a story of brave knights and fair maidens, of dragons and magic, of good triumphing over evil. The children listen with rapt attention, their eyes wide with wonder. Stories like these are the entertainment of the age, shared around fires and in great halls alike. In a time before books are common, they serve as both education and escape, teaching lessons of morality and courage while transporting listeners to realms of fantasy. As the story ends and the children drift off to sleep, the father banks the fire and the mother tidies the cottage. They too will soon retire for the night to rest their weary bodies and rise with the sun to begin another day of toil. For most in the medieval era, life follows this simple cyclical pattern dictated by the rising and setting of the sun, the turning of the seasons. It's a hard life, one of constant labor and little leisure, where drought or disease can spell disaster. Yet, there are also moments of joy and community in the celebrations of a good harvest, a wedding, or a saint's feast day. In the countryside, far from the bustle of the cities and towns, the night brings a profound stillness. The only sounds are the gentle lowing of cattle, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of the wind through the trees. Under the canopy of stars, the medieval world slumbers. But not all sleep. In the monasteries, the faithful keep their nightly vigils. Monks chant prayers in the chapel, their voices rising in ancient haunting melodies. In the scriptorium, scribes work by candlelight to painstakingly copy sacred texts and scholarly works, preserving the wisdom of the ancients. For these men of God, the night is a time of quiet devotion and reflection. They have forsaken the worldly life for one of contemplation and service, dedicating themselves to prayer, study, and the care of the poor and sick. In their gardens they grow medicinal herbs and tend to the ailing. In their libraries they safeguard the knowledge of the past and teach the scholars of the future. Theirs is a life of discipline and sacrifice, but also one of purpose and spiritual fulfillment. As the night deepens, even the monks retire, leaving the monastery in silence. The candles are extinguished, the books closed. Only the eternal light in the chapel remains, a symbol of the constant presence of God. In the cities, the night takes on a different character. Though the respectable citizens sleep, the taverns and inns are alive with activity. Here, travelers and locals alike gather to drink, gamble, and share news from afar. In a corner, a minstrel strums a lute and sings a bawdy ballad, much to the delight of the crowd. A group of merchants discuss the latest wares and prices, striking deals over cups of ale. A young scholar debates philosophy with an old soldier, their voices rising over the din. These are the places where social boundaries blur, where a peasant may rub shoulders with a nobleman, where a foreigner may find a welcome. They are the melting pots of the medieval world, where ideas and stories are traded as readily as goods and coin. But even these lively spaces eventually quiet as the night wears on. The minstrel packs up his lute. The merchants shake hands on their agreements. The scholar and soldier drain their cups and bid farewell. One by one, the patrons stumble out into the night, making their way home by the light of the moon. In the castle, the lord and lady sleep in their opulent bedchamber, attended by servants. For them, comfort and security are given, their power and wealth ensuring a life far removed from the struggles of the common folk. But even they are not immune to the darker aspects of medieval life. Political intrigue, war, and disease respect no rank. A noble life can be snuffed out as quickly as a peasant's by a blade in the dark, a festering wound, or a sweeping plague. And so, as the castle sleeps, guards pace the battlements, ever watchful for signs of threat. In the stables, a squire sleeps among the horses, ready to rouse at a moment's notice. Even in repose, the machinery of power and protection never fully rests. As the deepest part of the night approaches, a hush falls over the land. It's the quietest hour, when even the most restless souls succumb to sleep's embrace. In these moments, the medieval world seems to hold its breath, suspended between the labors of one day and the promise of the next. It's a time of dreams and visions, when the veil between the earthly and the divine seems thinnest. Some say it's in these hours that saints and angels walk the earth, that miracles are most likely to occur. Others whisper of darker things, of ghosts and demons, of witches' sabbaths and unspeakable rituals. But for most, this is simply the hour of deepest sleep, when the body and mind rest and repair, preparing for the dawn that will inevitably come. In cottages and castles, in monasteries and inns, the people of the medieval world slumber, their lives and fates intertwined in the great tapestry of history. And as we too drift in that liminal space between wakefulness and dreams, we can imagine ourselves among them, peasant or noble, monk or merchant, all equal in the eyes of sleep. Their world may be long past, but in these moments it feels close enough to touch, a vivid dream of a distant era. So let us linger here a while in this realm of quiet and shadow, and let the lullaby of history carry us gently into the embrace of sleep. For in the end, whether we wake in a modern bed or on a straw pallet, we are all threads in time's great weave, our dreams and stories intertwined across the ages. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams be filled with the wonders and mysteries of the medieval world. May you find rest and peace in the knowledge that you, too, are part of the great human story, a story that continues to unfold with each passing night and each breaking dawn. Sleep well and dream deep. As the night's final hours wane, the first stirrings of a new day begin. In the east, the sky lightens from inky black to deep blue, the stars fading one by one. The cock crows, a clarion call that echoes across the slumbering landscape. In the villages and towns, the people begin to wake, rubbing sleep from their eyes and stretching stiff limbs. The baker stokes his oven. The blacksmith kindles his forge. The farmer's wife starts the day's bread. The miller's daughter fetches water from the well. Slowly, the medieval world comes to life, each person taking up their role in the great dance of existence. The shepherd leads his flock to pasture. The weaver settles at her loom. The priest dons his vestments for morning mass. The monk takes up his quill in the scriptorium. In the castle, servants bustle to prepare the morning meal. The lord and lady dress for the day's affairs. In the courtyard, The knights and squires begin their training, the clang of sword on shield ringing out in the crisp morning air. And so, as one day ends, another begins, the cycle endlessly repeating. The medieval world is a place of constant motion, of birth and death, of sowing and reaping, of war and peace. It's a world of great hardship and great beauty, of cruelty and kindness, of ignorance and wisdom. For those who call it home, it's the only world they know, the backdrop against which their lives and loves, their triumphs and tragedies play out. They navigate its challenges and cherish its joys, finding meaning and purpose in the roles they've been given, in the beliefs they hold dear. And for us, looking back across the centuries, it's a world that fascinates and intrigues, that repels and attracts. We marvel at its accomplishments and recoil at its brutalities. We seek to understand its mysteries and learn from its lessons. In the end, perhaps the medieval era is not so different from our own, a time of great change and upheaval, of conflict and progress, of individuals striving to make their way in a world they can't fully control or comprehend. And just as we look back on their time with a mix of nostalgia and critique, of admiration and horror, so too might future generations look back on ours. We too are living in a story still being written, our actions and choices shaping the course of history in ways we can only dimly perceive. So perhaps the greatest lesson the medieval world can teach us is one of humility and perspective. We are all, in the end, only brief candles against the long night of history. Our individual lives mere flickers in the great cosmic dance. But what a dance it is, and what a privilege to be a part of it, to add our own small light to the sum of human experience, whether we wake in a castle or a cottage, whether our days are filled with toil or leisure, we each have a role to play, a contribution to make. And so, as the medieval world stirs to life for another day, let us too rise to meet the challenges and opportunities of our own time. Let us learn from the past, but not be bound by it. Let us honor the wisdom of our ancestors while striving to create a better future for our descendants. For the great wheel of history turns on, and we turn with it, our stories, weaving together across time and space, across culture and creed. And in the end, perhaps that is the greatest wonder of all, that in our infinite diversity, we are all at heart one human family, united by our common hopes and dreams, our common joys and sorrows. So let us greet this new day with open hearts and minds, ready to write our own chapter in the great book of human history. Let us take inspiration from the triumphs and failures of the past, but let us also have the courage to imagine a different future, one of greater justice, compassion, and understanding. And let us never forget that whether we live in a time of darkness or light, of peace or strife, we are all part of something greater than ourselves, a grand and mysterious tapestry that stretches back to the dawn of time and forward to the horizon of eternity. This is the lesson of the medieval world and of all worlds, a lesson whispered in the rustle of leaves and the babble of brooks, in the laughter of children and the wisdom of elders. It's a lesson that echoes in the stillness of the cloister and the clamor of the battlefield, in the quiet of a peasant's hut and the grandeur of a king's hall. And it's a lesson that we too can carry with us, a reminder of our shared humanity, our shared destiny, our shared hope for a world where all may wake to the dawning of a brighter day. So rest now, dear listener, and let the wisdom of the ages guide your dreams, for tomorrow is a new day full of promise and possibility, and who knows what wonders it may bring. Good night, and may the peace of centuries past enfold you. May the hope of centuries yet to come inspire you, and may the love that binds us all across all times and all places forever light your way. As the day ends, you return to your humble cottage, your body aching from the long hours of toil in the fields. The setting sun casts a warm glow over the thatched roofs of the village, and the air is filled with the sounds of livestock being herded into pens for the night. You sit down to a simple meal of stew and bread with your family, the flickering light of the hearth casting dancing shadows on the walls. The conversation turns to the events of the day, the progress of the harvest, the health of the animals, the latest news from the neighboring villages. As the night deepens, you climb into your straw bed, pulling a rough woolen blanket up to your chin. The sounds of the village fade away, replaced by the gentle crackle of the dying fire and the soft breathing of your family. Sleep claims you easily, your body and mind exhausted from the day's labors. But as you drift off, your thoughts turn to the wider world beyond your village, to the great lords and ladies in their grand castles, to the monks in their monasteries, to the merchants and craftsmen in the bustling towns. You may be just a simple peasant, but you are part of something much larger, a complex tapestry of social order and tradition that stretches back for centuries. The feudal system that governs your life is based on a strict hierarchy, with the king at the top, followed by the nobles, knights, clergy, and finally the peasants like yourself at the bottom. It's a system that offers you protection and stability, but also demands your obedience and labor. The lord in his castle may seem distant and all-powerful, but he too has obligations to provide for the defense and justice of his people and to honor his own vows of fealty to the king. These social bonds, whether between lord and vassal or master and apprentice, are the glue that holds the medieval world together. They are reinforced by the teachings of the Church, which emphasizes faith, humility, and one's proper place in the God-given order. But even as you sleep, forces are at work that will begin to challenge and transform this age-old system. In the towns and cities, a new class is emerging. The burghers and merchants who owe their wealth and status not to land and title, but to trade and commerce. Their world is one of guilds and charters, of contracts and loans, of the calculation of profit and risk. They are a breed apart from the nobles with their codes of chivalry and their disdain for the lowborn. And as their economic power grows, so too will their political influence. At the same time, the Church, long the dominant force in medieval life, is facing its own challenges. The corruption and worldliness of some of its leaders is becoming harder to ignore, and voices of dissent are beginning to be heard. Voices that question the very foundations of papal authority. In the universities and monasteries, scholars are rediscovering the wisdom of the ancient Greeks and Romans, sparking a new interest in classical learning and humanist thought. They debate ideas that will come to shape the Renaissance and Reformation ideas about the nature of man, the role of the individual, and the proper relationship between church and state. And on the horizon, a new power is rising, the power of the nation-state. As kings begin to assert their authority over the nobles and the church, They lay the foundations for the modern concept of sovereignty and centralized rule. But for now, these changes are still in their infancy, and the medieval worldview still holds sway. As you sleep, you are part of a society that is both deeply traditional and slowly evolving. A society that is about to be tested by plague, war, and religious upheaval. In your dreams, perhaps you catch glimpses of this future, of the towering cathedrals and bustling markets of the High Middle Ages, of the bloody battlefields of the 100 Years' War, of the printing presses and explorers' ships that will carry medieval Europe into a new era. But for now, the rhythms of village life go on as they have for generations. The sun will rise again tomorrow, and with it, another day of work and worship, of joy and sorrow, of the timeless cycle of birth, life, and death. As you sink deeper into sleep, let your mind wander through the tapestry of medieval history, from the fall of Rome to the dawn of the Renaissance. Let the stories of kings and commoners, saints and sinners wash over you like a gentle stream. And know that you too are part of this great human story, a story that is still being written even as we speak. Your life, your struggles, your triumphs and defeats are woven into the fabric of history just as surely as those of the greatest lords and ladies. So rest now and let the medieval world be your lullaby. Let the soft glow of the hearth and the murmur of your family's voices carry you into a deep and dreamless sleep. And may you wake in the morning to face the new day with the same strength and resilience that carried your ancestors through the challenges of their age. For the medieval world may seem distant and strange to us now, but its echoes are still with us in the very foundations of our society and culture, and as long as we remember and learn from its lessons, it will never truly be lost. So sleep and dream, and know that you are part of a rich and enduring human tapestry, a tapestry that stretches back through the centuries and will continue on long after we are gone. Good night, and may your medieval slumber be filled with peace and wonder. As the night deepens and the village sleeps, let us turn our gaze to another figure who looms large in the medieval imagination, the knight. Born into the nobility, the knight is a warrior, a servant of his lord, and a paragon of chivalric virtue. From a young age, he is trained in the arts of war, in swordsmanship, horsemanship, and the code of honor that sets him apart from the common soldier. He learns to fight with lance and shield, to bear the weight of his armor, to face death and danger with courage and resolve. But the knight is more than just a warrior. He is also a symbol of the feudal order, a living embodiment of the values and ideals of medieval society. He is sworn to defend the weak, to honor his word, to serve his lord with loyalty and devotion. In times of peace, he participates in tournaments and jousts, displaying his prowess and valor for all to see. He courts noble ladies with poetry and song, striving to embody the courtly love ideal of the chaste and faithful servant. And in times of war, he is the backbone of his lord's army, the heavy cavalry that can break the enemy's lines and turn the tide of battle. He rides into combat with his banner fluttering overhead, his armor gleaming in the sun, his heart filled with the fierce joy of battle. But the life of a knight is not all glory and romance. It is also one of constant training and discipline, of long hours in the saddle and on the march, of the ever-present risk of injury and death. And as the Middle Ages wear on, the role of the knight begins to change and evolve. With the rise of the longbow and the cannon, the armored knight becomes increasingly vulnerable on the battlefield. And as the feudal system begins to break down, many knights find themselves adrift, their traditional roles and loyalties called into question. Some turn to brigandage and mercenary work, using their martial skills for personal gain rather than noble service. Others seek new outlets for their energies, joining the Crusades or embarking on quests for the Holy Grail. But even as the age of chivalry wanes, the ideal of the knight remains a powerful one, a symbol of courage, honor, and devotion that will inspire poets and dreamers for centuries to come. And so, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander to the tourney fields and castles of the knights, to the clashing of swords and the flutter of banners in the breeze. Let their stories of valor and sacrifice, of love and loss, be your guide and your comfort in the darkness of the night. For in the end, the medieval world is a world of stories, stories of kings and queens, of saints and sinners, of the great and the small. And it is through these stories that we come to understand and appreciate the richness and complexity of this long-ago era. So let the tales of the knights be part of your own story, part of the great tapestry of human history that unites us all. And as you sleep, know that you are part of something much larger than yourself, a world of wonder and mystery, of faith and fear, of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with the colors and textures of the medieval world, the glint of armor in the sun, the whisper of wind through the trees, the soft glow of candlelight in a castle window. For it is in our dreams that the past comes alive again, and we are all part of its enduring legacy. As you slip deeper into your medieval slumber, let us turn our attention to another figure who casts a long shadow over this age, the monk. Clad in simple robes and bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, the monk is a seeker of God and a guardian of knowledge in a time when learning is a rare and precious thing. In the early days of the Middle Ages, as the Western Roman Empire crumbles and chaos descends upon Europe, it is the monks who preserve the flame of civilization. In their monasteries and abbeys, they copy and illuminate ancient manuscripts, keeping alive the wisdom of the Greeks and Romans. They also develop new forms of agriculture and animal husbandry, turning their monasteries into self-sufficient islands of order and productivity in a sea of disorder and want. And as the centuries pass, they become increasingly involved in the affairs of the wider world, serving as advisors to kings and popes and even leading armies in battle. But at the heart of the monastic life is the search for God, a search that takes many forms and follows many paths. Some monks, like the Benedictines, seek God through work and prayer, dividing their days between manual labor and the divine office. Others, like the Carthusians, seek him through solitude and silence, withdrawing from the world into a life of contemplation and asceticism. And still others, like the Franciscans and Dominicans, seek him through service to the poor and the preaching of the gospel. Regardless of their particular vocation, all monks share a common goal: to draw closer to God through the discipline and devotion of the religious life. They rise before dawn to chant the Psalms, spend long hours in prayer and meditation, and strive to subdue their earthly desires through fasting and self-denial. And in doing so, they offer a powerful witness to a world that is all too often consumed by violence, greed, and the pursuit of power. They remind us that there is more to life than the fleeting pleasures of the flesh, and that true happiness and fulfillment can only be found in the love and service of God. As you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander to the cloisters and scriptoriums of the monks, to the sound of chanting voices and the scratch of quill on parchment. Let their example of devotion and discipline be a comfort and an inspiration to you, a reminder that even in the darkest of times there is always a light that guides us home. And know that you too are called to seek that light, to follow the path of truth and goodness wherever it may lead. For the medieval world may seem a world of great darkness and great beauty, but it is also a world that points beyond itself to the eternal truths that lie at the heart of all human striving. So rest now, and let the peace of the monastery enfold you like a cloak. Let the prayers of the monks be your lullaby, and the love of God be your guiding star. And may you wake in the morning with a heart renewed and a spirit refreshed, ready to face the challenges and the joys of another day. For in the end, the medieval world is not so different from our own, a world of light and shadow, of hope and fear, of the endless quest for meaning and purpose in the face of an uncertain future. And it is only by embracing that quest, by seeking the truth with all our hearts and all our minds, that we can hope to find our way home. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with the beauty and the mystery of the medieval world, the soaring spires of the cathedrals, the gentle glow of the scriptorium, the quiet footsteps of the monks in the cloister. For it is in the stillness of the night that we come closest to the heart of God, and it is in His love that we find our true rest and our true home. As the night wears on and the candles burn low, let us turn our thoughts to one last figure who looms large in the medieval imagination, the merchant. Born of the bustling cities and towns of Europe, the merchant is a new kind of man, one who owes his wealth and status not to land or title, but to his own wits and industry. In a world dominated by the feudal order, the merchant is an outsider, a man who moves between worlds and classes with ease. He travels the trade routes of Europe and beyond, bringing back exotic goods and ideas from distant lands. In the cities, he's a man of influence and power, a member of the growing middle class that will one day challenge the dominance of the nobility. He's a master of the art of the deal, a shrewd negotiator who knows how to turn a profit and protect his interests. But the life of a merchant is not without its risks and challenges. The roads are dangerous, beset by bandits and thieves, and the seas are treacherous with storms and pirates lurking around every corner. And in the cutthroat world of commerce, one false move can mean ruin and disgrace. To succeed, the merchant must be cunning and adaptable, always ready to seize opportunity and avoid danger. He must navigate the complex web of guilds and monopolies that control trade in the cities and forge alliances with the powerful and the influential. And yet, for all his worldly success, the merchant is often viewed with suspicion and disdain by the traditional elites. To the nobility, he is an upstart and a parvenu, a man who has risen above his station through cleverness rather than breeding. And to the church, he is a potential threat, a man whose love of money and worldly goods could lead him astray from the path of righteousness. The merchant must walk a fine line, balancing his pursuit of profit with his obligations to God and society. But despite these challenges, the merchant class will play an increasingly important role in the centuries to come. As trade expands and cities grow, they will become the engine of a new kind of economy, one based on commerce and industry rather than land and agriculture. And as they do so, they will help to shape a new world, one in which the old certainties of the feudal order are gradually replaced by the dynamic and unpredictable forces of the market. The merchant may not wield a sword or a scepter, but in his own way, he is a key figure in the great drama of the Middle Ages. So, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander to the bustling markets and counting houses of the medieval cities, to the sound of haggling voices and clinking coins. Let the stories of the merchants be your guide and your inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always room for hope and opportunity. And know that you too are part of this great tapestry of human endeavor, a tapestry that stretches back through the centuries and will continue on long after we are gone. For the medieval world may be a world of great challenges and great rewards, but it is also a world that reminds us of the enduring power of the human spirit. So rest now and let the dreams of the merchants be your lullaby. Let their tales of adventure and adversity, of risk and reward, carry you into a deep and peaceful slumber. And may you wake in the morning with a heart full of courage and determination, ready to face the challenges and opportunities of your own life's journey. For in the end, the medieval world is a mirror of our own, a world of darkness and light, of fear and hope, of the endless struggle to find meaning and purpose in the face of an uncertain future. And it is only by embracing that struggle, by daring to dream and to strive, that we can hope to leave our own mark upon the great tapestry of history. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with the sights and sounds of the medieval world, the bustle of the market square, the gleam of gold and silver, the whispered prayers of the merchant before a long journey. For it is in our dreams that we are most truly free, and it is in freedom that we find the courage to face the challenges of the waking world. As the first light of dawn begins to peek through the shutters, you stir from your slumber, your mind still filled with the sights and sounds of the medieval world. The cock crows outside, heralding the start of a new day, and you can hear the village beginning to come to life around you. You lie still for a moment, savoring the warmth and comfort of your bed, the quiet peace of the early morning. And as you do so, you reflect on the journey you have taken through the pages of history, from the humble peasant to the lofty king, from the pious monk to the worldly merchant. Each of these figures has shown you a different face of the medieval world, a different way of living and thinking and being. And each has left you with a deeper appreciation for the richness and complexity of this long-ago era, for the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and tragedies that marked the lives of our ancestors. But as you rise to face the day ahead, you realize that the true gift of, as the gentle veil of sleep descends upon you, let us delve further into the rich tapestry of medieval history, focusing now on some of the most influential and fascinating figures of the time. One such figure was Eleanor of Aquitaine, a woman who defied the conventions of her era and left an indelible mark on the course of European history. Born in 1122 into the wealthy and powerful house of Poitiers, Eleanor was the granddaughter of the famous troubadour William the Ninth and grew up immersed in the vibrant arts and culture of southern France. At the age of just 15, she inherited the vast duchy of Aquitaine, making her the most eligible bride in Europe. Soon after, she wed Louis VII, the young king of France, in a magnificent ceremony. As queen, Eleanor brought a touch of southern refinement to the northern court, introducing the music, poetry, and courtly love traditions of her homeland. But Eleanor was no mere consort. She was a formidable presence known for her sharp wit, political acumen, and fierce independence. In 1147, she even accompanied Louis on the ill-fated Second Crusade to the Holy Land, leading her own contingent of knights and ladies through the treacherous terrain of Anatolia. The crusade was a disaster, and the strains it placed on the royal marriage, coupled with Eleanor's failure to produce a male heir, led to its annulment in 1152. But Eleanor's story was far from over. Just 8 weeks after the annulment, she wed Henry Plantagenet, the young Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou, who 2 years later would ascend to the throne of England as Henry II. As Queen of England, Eleanor presided over a court renowned for its sophistication and learning. She was a patron of the arts, a collector of books, and a savvy political operator, using her wealth and influence to support her sons in their rebellions against their father. But Eleanor's life was also marked by tragedy and tumult. Her marriage to Henry was tempestuous, marred by his infidelities and their bitter power struggles. In 1173, after Eleanor's support for her son's failed rebellion, Henry had her imprisoned, where she remained for 16 years. Yet, even in captivity, Eleanor remained a force to be reckoned with. She continued to wield influence through her children, particularly her favorite son, Richard the Lionheart, who became king in 1189. Upon Henry's death, Richard finally released his mother, who rode out to meet him with a face of joy despite her 70 years. In her later years, Eleanor served as regent while Richard was on crusade, skillfully navigating the treacherous waters of medieval politics. She traveled ceaselessly throughout England and France, shoring up support for her son and negotiating alliances, including the pivotal treaty with Philip Augustus of France. Eleanor died in 1204 at the ripe old age of 82, an extraordinary lifespan for the time. She had outlived 8 of her 10 children, 2 husbands, and most of her contemporaries. Her legacy was immense. Through her sons, she was the ancestor of both the English and French royal lines for generations to come. But more than that, Eleanor represented a new kind of queenship, one that was not merely ceremonial, but actively engaged in the politics and culture of the realm. She challenged the narrow confines of a woman's role in medieval society, proving that a queen could be a patron, a politician, and a power in her own right. As you drift off to sleep, let the extraordinary life of Eleanor of Aquitaine be a reminder of the remarkable individuals who populated the medieval world, men and women who, through their actions and their force of character, shaped the course of history in ways that still resonate today. Their stories are a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity, to create beauty in the midst of brutality, and to leave a lasting mark on the world. And as you slip into dreams, know that you too are part of this great human story, connected across time to those who came before and those who will come after. Another figure who loomed large in the medieval imagination was the great philosopher and theologian Thomas Aquinas. Born into a noble Italian family in 1225, Thomas was a precocious child who at the age of just 5 was sent to study at the famous Benedictine Abbey of Monte Cassino. But Thomas's heart was drawn to the new mendicant orders, particularly the Dominicans, who emphasized poverty, preaching, and intellectual rigor. Against his family's wishes, he joined the Dominicans in 1244, a decision that would set the course for his life and work. As a young friar, Thomas studied under the great Albertus Magnus in Paris and Cologne, immersing himself in the newly rediscovered works of Aristotle and the Islamic philosophers. He quickly gained a reputation as a brilliant thinker, known for his clarity of thought and his systematic approach to theology and philosophy. Thomas's great masterpiece was the Summa Theologica, a vast compendium of Christian thought that sought to reconcile faith and reason, revelation, and natural philosophy. In the Summa, Thomas grappled with the deepest questions of existence, the nature of God, the purpose of human life, the problem of evil, and the path to salvation. Central to Thomas's thought was the idea that faith and reason were not in conflict, but rather two paths to the same truth. He argued that the truths of revelation, while beyond the grasp of unaided human reason, could never contradict the truths of rational inquiry. For Thomas, the study of nature and the use of reason were not threats to faith, but ways of understanding God's creation and drawing closer to the divine. This idea would have profound implications for the development of Western thought. By insisting on the compatibility of faith and reason, Thomas helped pave the way for the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. At the same time, his emphasis on the rational basis of faith helped to shape the intellectual culture of the Church for centuries to come. But Thomas was not just an abstract thinker. He was also a deeply spiritual man, known for his humility, his gentleness, and his devotion to the Eucharist. In his final years, while celebrating Mass, he had a mystical experience that left him unable to write. "All that I have written," he said, "seems like straw to me compared to what has now been revealed to me." Thomas died in 1274 at the age of just 49. Leaving behind a legacy that would shape the course of Western philosophy and theology for generations. He was canonized in 1323 and declared a doctor of the Church in 1567. Today, he is considered one of the greatest thinkers in the history of Christianity, a man whose ideas continue to resonate and inspire. As you drift off to sleep, let the story of Thomas Aquinas be a reminder of the power of the human mind to grapple with the deepest questions of existence and of the enduring quest to find meaning and truth in a complex and often confusing world. And let it also be a reminder of the importance of humility and wonder in the face of the divine mystery, the recognition that for all our striving and all our knowledge, there is always more to be revealed, always further heights of wisdom and understanding to be scaled. The medieval period was also a time of great artistic flourishing, and nowhere was this more evident than in the soaring cathedrals that began to rise across Europe in the 12th and 13th centuries. These magnificent structures were not just places of worship, but embodiments of the medieval worldview, the belief in a divinely ordered universe, hierarchical and harmonious, in which every element had its appointed place and purpose. One of the most remarkable of these cathedrals was Chartres, located in the picturesque town of the same name, about 50 miles southwest of Paris. The construction of the present cathedral began in 1194, after a fire destroyed much of the previous Romanesque church. Over the next few decades, thousands of workers labored to erect a masterpiece of Gothic architecture, a soaring symphony in stone that would become one of the most iconic buildings of the Middle Ages. At the heart of Chartres Cathedral is the labyrinth, a winding path inlaid in the floor of the nave. This labyrinth, unlike the later hedge mazes of Renaissance gardens, has only one path leading inexorably to the center and then back out again. For the medieval faithful, walking the labyrinth was a symbolic pilgrimage, a miniature version of the great journey to Jerusalem that was the aspiration of every pious Christian. The labyrinth is just one of the many symbolic elements that pervade every aspect of the cathedral's design. The great western facade, with its 3 portals and rows of sculpted saints and biblical figures, is a stone Bible, a visual catechism for the largely illiterate medieval congregation. The soaring vaults and pointed arches draw the eye and the spirit upward toward the heavenly realms, while the play of light through the great stained glass windows creates an atmosphere of mystery and awe. But Chartres is more than just a work of art or a feat of engineering. It is a testament to the deep faith and communal spirit of the medieval world. The cathedral was not built by a single wealthy patron, but by the entire community, with rich and poor alike contributing their labor, their skills, and their resources. The construction site was a place of pilgrimage in itself, with workers coming from all over Europe to lend their efforts to the great endeavor. This sense of shared purpose and divine mission is reflected in the many legends that grew up around the cathedral's construction. One tells of a mysterious figure known as the Master of the Labyrinth, a genius architect who appeared one day and directed the building of the great maze, only to disappear just as suddenly when the work was done. Another tells of a miraculous beam of wood that, when the carpenters found it too short, spontaneously elongated itself to the required length. These legends speak to the way in which Chartres and the other great cathedrals of the medieval world were more than just buildings. They were expressions of a shared faith, a common culture, and a collective aspiration toward the divine. They were, in a sense, the embodiment of the medieval worldview itself, the belief in a universe suffused with meaning and purpose, in which every stone and every beam had its place in the great cosmic order. As you drift off to sleep, let the majesty and mystery of Chartres Cathedral be a reminder of the power of faith and community to create something greater than the sum of its parts. And let it also be an invitation to find in your own life those places and moments of transcendence where the everyday world falls away and you are caught up in something larger than yourself. For the medieval mind, such moments were a glimpse of the divine, a foretaste of the heavenly Jerusalem that awaited the faithful at the end of their earthly pilgrimage. And while our modern world may seem far removed from the certainties and hierarchies of the Middle Ages, the human longing for meaning and connection remains as strong as ever. So as you slip into the realm of dreams, carry with you the memory of Chartres and the other wonders of the medieval world, not as relics of a bygone age, but as enduring reminders of the heights to which the human spirit can soar when it is guided by faith, purpose, and a sense of its place in the grand tapestry of creation. The medieval period was also an age of great learning and scholarship. Despite the popular image of the era as one of ignorance and superstition, in fact, the 12th and 13th centuries saw a remarkable flowering of intellectual life centered around the great universities that began to emerge in cities like Paris, Bologna, and Oxford. One of the most important figures in this intellectual revival was Roger Bacon, a 13th century English philosopher and scientist who has been called the first modern thinker. Born into a wealthy family in 1214, Bacon studied at Oxford and Paris before joining the Franciscan order in 1247. As a friar, he devoted himself to the study of nature and the pursuit of knowledge, working tirelessly to expand the boundaries of human understanding. Bacon was a true polymath, with interests ranging from mathematics and optics to linguistics and alchemy. He was one of the first Western thinkers to argue for the importance of empirical observation and experimentation in the study of nature, and he made significant contributions to the fields of optics and astronomy, including a detailed description of the use of lenses for magnification. But Bacon was also a man ahead of his time, and his ideas often brought him into conflict with the authorities of his day. He was a vocal critic of the narrow scholasticism that dominated much of medieval learning, arguing that true knowledge could only be attained through a combination of reason, observation, and divine revelation. In his great masterpiece, the Opus Majus, Bacon laid out a sweeping vision for the reform of education and the advancement of knowledge. He argued for the importance of studying languages, particularly Greek and Arabic, in order to access the wisdom of the ancients and the cutting-edge science of the Islamic world. He also emphasized the need for a more practical and empirical approach to learning, one that would equip students with the skills and knowledge needed to navigate the complexities of the world. Bacon's ideas were met with suspicion and even hostility by many of his contemporaries, who saw him as a dangerous radical. He was accused of heresy and sorcery, and spent many years in prison as a result of his unconventional views. But despite the obstacles he faced, Bacon never lost his passion for knowledge or his belief in the power of the human mind to unravel the mysteries of the universe. In many ways, Bacon was a man out of step with his time, a visionary thinker who saw beyond the limitations of medieval science and philosophy, and who dared to imagine a world in which knowledge was a tool for the betterment of humanity rather than a weapon of dogma and control. His legacy lived on long after his death, inspiring generations of scientists and thinkers who would build on his ideas and carry forward his vision of a more enlightened and rational world. As you drift off to sleep, let the story of Roger Bacon be a reminder of the enduring power of the human intellect to push beyond the boundaries of the known and to imagine new possibilities for the future. And let it also be a call to embrace the spirit of curiosity and wonder that lies at the heart of all true learning, the desire to understand the world in all its complexity and beauty, and to use that understanding to make a positive difference in the lives of others. For while the medieval world may seem distant and foreign to us today, the basic human impulse to explore, to discover, and to create is as strong now as it ever was. And as we navigate the challenges and uncertainties of our own time, we can draw strength and inspiration from the example of thinkers like Roger Bacon men and women who dared to question the received wisdom of their age and who worked tirelessly to expand the frontiers of human knowledge and understanding. So as you slip into the realm of dreams, carry with you the spirit of the great medieval thinkers, their curiosity, their courage, and their unshakable belief in the power of the mind to illuminate even the darkest corners of the universe. And know that in your own way, you too are part of this great and ongoing quest for truth and meaning, a quest that connects us across the centuries and reminds us of our common humanity. The figure of the knight looms large in our popular image of the Middle Ages, a figure of chivalry and romance, of brave deeds and courtly love. But the reality of knighthood was often far removed from the idealized image of the storybooks. To be a knight in medieval Europe was to occupy a unique and often precarious position, caught between the demands of feudal society and the changing realities of warfare and politics. One of the most famous knights of the medieval period was William Marshal, a man whose life embodied both the ideals and the realities of knighthood. Born in 1146 into a minor noble family, William was given as a hostage to King Stephen of England at the age of 5. A common practice in the feudal system to ensure the loyalty of vassal lords. Despite this inauspicious start, William would go on to become one of the most celebrated knights of his age. He distinguished himself in tournaments and on the battlefield, serving under 5 English kings and earning a reputation as a paragon of chivalry and honor. He was a skilled diplomat as well as a warrior, and played a key role in negotiating the peace between England and France in the early 13th century. But William's life was also marked by the harsh realities of medieval politics and warfare. He was captured and held for ransom several times and fought in numerous battles and campaigns across Europe and the Holy Land. He saw firsthand the brutality and chaos of the Crusades and the deep divisions within Christendom that they exposed. Despite these challenges, William remained true to his ideals of knighthood throughout his life. He was known for his loyalty, his courage, and his sense of fair play, even in the face of great adversity. He was a patron of the arts and a supporter of the church, and used his influence to promote justice and stability in a turbulent age. In many ways, William Marshal embodies the complex and contradictory nature of knighthood in the Middle Ages. On the one hand, knights were the embodiment of a high medieval ideal, brave, chivalrous, and devoted to the service of God and their feudal lords. They were the backbone of the medieval military system and played a key role in the expansion and defense of Christendom. But at the same time, knights were also deeply enmeshed in the brutal realities of medieval warfare and politics. They were often caught up in the endless cycle of feudal violence and revenge, and their loyalty to their lords could lead them into conflict with the broader interests of society. The ideals of chivalry, while noble in theory, were often honored more in the breach than in the observance. As you drift off to sleep, as the echoes of the medieval world fade into the realm of dreams, let us linger a moment longer on the rich tapestry of life in those times. The clatter of hooves on cobblestones, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the tolling of church bells. These were the sounds that marked the rhythm of daily existence. For the vast majority, life was a struggle against the elements, against hunger and disease. The peasant in the field, the weaver at the loom, the mason chipping away at a block of stone. Their lives were defined by toil, their horizons often limited to the village or town of their birth. But even in the midst of hardship, there was community. The bonds of family, of shared labor, and shared faith that wove people together. In the evenings around the hearth fire, stories were told of brave knights and holy saints, of mischievous spirits and miraculous events. These tales, passed down through generations, provided comfort and wisdom, a way of making sense of the world. And what a world it was, a place of extremes, of soaring beauty and grim brutality. The same society that produced the delicate tracery of a Gothic cathedral also bore witness to the horrors of the torture chamber. The chivalric ideals of honor and courtesy coexisted with the harsh realities of feudal oppression. It was a world of hierarchy, where every person knew their place in the great chain of being. The king sat at the top, ruling by divine right, followed by the nobles, the clergy, the merchants, and finally, the peasants. To question this order was to question the very will of God. But change was coming, slowly but inexorably. The growth of towns and trade, the spread of learning, the weakening of feudal bonds. All these factors were transforming society. The old ways were giving way to the new, even if the process would take centuries to unfold. One harbinger of this change was the rise of the merchant class. These were men who had grown rich not through land or lineage, but through trade and commerce. They were a new kind of power in the world, one based on money rather than might. In the great trading cities of Italy and the Low Countries, these merchants built palatial homes, patronized artists and scholars, and began to challenge the dominance of the old aristocracy. They were the vanguard of a new era, one in which wealth and enterprise would increasingly shape the course of events. But for now, in the sleepy villages and craggy castles of the medieval landscape, life went on much as it had for generations. The farmer tilled his field, the monk illuminated his manuscript, the lady embroidered her tapestry. Each played their part in the great drama of existence, bound by tradition and faith. As you drift deeper into sleep, let your mind wander through this lost world. Imagine yourself walking the narrow, winding streets of a medieval town, passing the open-air stalls of the market, the workshops of the craftsmen. Hear the cries of the street vendors hawking their wares. Smell the pungent mix of spices, smoke, and humanity. Or picture yourself in a monastery garden, surrounded by the gentle hum of bees and the rustle of robes. Watch the monks at their work, tending the herbs and vegetables, copying ancient texts with painstaking care. Feel the sense of peace and purpose that pervades this cloistered world. And as you slip further into dreams, let the great events of the age swirl around you like mist. The clash of armies on a distant battlefield, the pageantry of a royal procession, the fervor of a religious pilgrimage. These are the moments that define the medieval era, that echo through history. But remember, too, the smaller moments, the ones that make up the warp and weft of daily life, the laughter of children playing in a sunlit field, the warmth of a fire on a cold winter's night, the joy of a bountiful harvest, the sorrow of a loved one lost. These are the timeless experiences that connect us across the centuries, that remind us of our shared humanity. As you finally drift off into the realm of dreams, take with you a sense of the richness and complexity of the medieval world. It was a time of great darkness and great light, of cruelty and kindness, of ignorance and wisdom. And in its joys and sorrows, its triumphs and tragedies, it reflects the eternal human condition, the endless struggle to find meaning and purpose in a changeful world. So sleep now, and let the distant strains of a lute, the soft chant of a prayer, the whisper of wind through a castle embrasure carry you into the depths of slumber. And as you dream, remember that you are part of a story that stretches back through the ages, a story of which the medieval era is but one chapter in an endlessly unfolding tale. The medieval world may be gone, but it is not forgotten. Its legacy lives on in the stones of our cities, the pages of our books, the very fabric of our thought. And as long as we remember and recount its stories, as long as we strive to learn from its wisdom and avoid its follies, it will continue to shape us, to guide us, to inspire us. So let us bid farewell to the Middle Ages, but let us not forget them. Let us carry their lessons with us as we navigate the uncertainties of our own time, as we seek to build a world that is more just, more compassionate, more enlightened. For in the end, that is the greatest gift that history can give us, the chance to learn from the past, to dream of a better future, and to make that dream a reality. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams be filled with the wonders and the wisdom of the ages. You blink awake as the first rays of dawn filter through the narrow window slit, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. The room is small and sparse, with walls of rough-hewn stone and a floor of beaten earth. A simple wooden cross hangs above the narrow bed where you lie, a reminder of the omnipresence of the church in this medieval world. You rise and stretch, feeling the coarse fabric of your monk's habit against your skin. The life of a monk is one of simplicity, devotion, and routine. You begin each day with prayer, kneeling on the cold stone floor of the monastery chapel as the first Mass is sung. The voices of your fellow monks rise in Gregorian chant, the ancient Latin words echoing off the vaulted ceiling. After Mass, you break your fast with a simple meal of bread and ale in the refectory. The fare is plain but nourishing, meant to sustain the body without indulging the senses. Gluttony is a sin, after all, and the monks are meant to lead a life of asceticism and self-denial. With breakfast done, you head to the scriptorium, the room where the monastery's precious books and manuscripts are kept. Here, monks spend their days painstakingly copying texts by hand, preserving the knowledge of the ancients and the teachings of the Church. It is slow, exacting work, requiring great patience and skill. You settle at your desk, a slanted wooden surface with a hole for an ink pot. You take up your quill, dip it in the ink, and begin to write, carefully forming each letter on the parchment before you. The scriptorium is silent, save for the scratching of quills and the occasional cough or shuffle of feet. As you work, your mind begins to wander, reflecting on the role of the monastery in medieval society. Monasteries are more than just religious houses. They are centers of learning, charity, and economic power. They provide education for the sons of nobles and a place of refuge for the poor and sick. They also control vast tracts of land, granted to them by pious donors, which are worked by peasants in exchange for the monks' prayers and spiritual guidance. But not all is peaceful within the monastery walls. Politics and power struggles are as prevalent here as in any royal court. Ambitious monks vie for positions of authority, currying favor with wealthy patrons and influential bishops. Some even dream of rising to the ultimate position, the papacy itself. As the day wears on, you set aside your quill and stretch your cramped fingers. It is time for the midday meal, a slightly more substantial repast of stewed vegetables, fish, and bread. The monks eat in silence, listening to one of their number read aloud from the Bible or the lives of the saints. After the meal, there is time for contemplation and study. You walk in the monastery gardens, enjoying the sun's warmth and the gentle buzz of bees in the herb beds. You watch a group of novices young men just beginning their monastic lives as they are put through their paces by a stern-looking master. They are learning the rule of Saint Benedict, the strict code that governs every aspect of monastic life. As the sun begins to set, you return to the chapel for Vespers, the evening prayer service. The monks' chants are slower now, more contemplative. The flickering candlelight casts dancing shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of mystery and solemnity. After Vespers, you retire to your cell for a few hours of sleep before rising again in the dead of night for matins, the first of the canonical hours. This is the pattern of your days, a ceaseless round of prayer, work, and contemplation. It is a hard life, one of self-denial and discipline, but it is also a life of purpose and spiritual fulfillment. In a world rife with violence, disease, and uncertainty, the monastery provides a haven of peace and stability. It is a beacon of light in the often dark times of the Middle Ages. As you drift off to sleep, you reflect on the paradoxes of monastic life. To the outside world, it may seem a life of confinement and restriction, but for those called to it, it is a life of liberation, freeing the soul from the snares of the material world to contemplate the divine. In your dreams, you see the great monasteries of the age: Monte Cassino in Italy, Cluny in France, Lindisfarne in England. You see the monks at their labors, copying manuscripts, tending gardens, offering succor to the poor and weary. And you see the great saints and scholars that the monasteries have produced: Benedict, Bede, Alcuin, Bernard of Clairvaux. The monasteries are the guardians of knowledge and culture in a turbulent age. They are the bridge between the classical world and the Renaissance to come. And for now, in this moment, you are a part of that grand tradition, a small but vital thread in the great tapestry of medieval life. As you sleep, the night passes and a new dawn approaches. The monastery bells will soon ring out, calling the faithful to prayer, and you will rise, ready to begin another day in the service of God and your fellow man in this fascinating, challenging world of the Middle Ages. But for now, rest. Now, let the peace of the monastery enfold you, and dream of a world where the light of knowledge and faith shines bright against the darkness. In the morning, that world will be yours to shape one prayer, one deed, one moment at a time. The scene fades and you sink deeper into sleep, the medieval monastery dissolving into the mists of dreams. The chants of the monks echo in your mind, a soothing lullaby from a distant age. And as you sleep, the wisdom and lessons of that age settle into your soul, enriching and enlightening, even as the modern world seems so far away. For that is the magic of history. It is never truly past, but alive within us, shaping our present and our future in ways we may not always understand. And in the depths of a medieval monastery, in the simple rhythms of prayer and work, in the quiet scratching of a quill on parchment, lie truths that echo across the centuries, waiting to be rediscovered by each new generation. So sleep now, and let the medieval world be your guide and your companion through the realms of night. In the morning you will awake, perhaps with a new understanding, a new appreciation for the richness and complexity of the human story. And the medieval monastery, with its chants and its bells, its saints and its scholars, will be a part of you, a reminder of the enduring power of faith, knowledge, and the indomitable human spirit. As the night deepens, the script comes to a close, leaving you to your dreams and the endless possibilities of the medieval world. May your sleep be blessed with the peace of the monasteries, and may you awake refreshed, inspired, and ready to embrace the day ahead. But the journey through medieval history is far from over. There are still many more tales to be told, many more characters to meet, many more lessons to be learned. And so, as you drift off into the welcoming embrace of sleep, know that the story continues, waiting for you to take up the quill and add your own chapter to the never-ending chronicle of human experience. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams be filled with the wonders and the wisdom of the Middle Ages. Until next time, when we shall meet again in the pages of history, in the realm of sleep and story, and the enduring magic of the human imagination, fare thee well and sleep in peace. As the echoes of the medieval world fade into the mists of your dreams, let's turn our attention to one of the most fascinating and influential figures of the era, a man who rose from obscurity to become the most powerful ruler in Europe, and whose legacy would shape the course of history for centuries to come. His name was Charlemagne, and his story is one of ambition, conquest, and the forging of an empire that would lay the foundations for the modern nation-states of Europe. Charlemagne was born in the year 742 into a noble family of the Franks, a Germanic people who had settled in the lands of modern-day France and Germany. His father, Pepin the Short, was the first of the Carolingian dynasty to rule as king of the Franks, and he passed on his crown to Charlemagne and his brother Carloman upon his death in 768. But Charlemagne was not content to simply rule alongside his brother. He was a man of towering ambition, with a vision of a united Christian empire stretching across Europe. And so when Carloman died unexpectedly, just a few years into their joint reign, Charlemagne wasted no time in claiming sole rulership of the Frankish kingdom. With a powerful army at his command, Charlemagne set out to expand his territories and bring the various peoples of Europe under his sway. He led his troops on a series of successful campaigns, conquering the Lombards in Italy, the Saxons in Germany, and the Avars in Hungary. As his empire grew, so too did Charlemagne's reputation as a great warrior and leader. He was known for his bravery on the battlefield, often fighting alongside his men and inspiring them with his courage and determination. But he was also a shrewd politician, forging alliances and using diplomacy to extend his influence far beyond the borders of his own kingdom. Under Charlemagne's rule, the Frankish Empire reached its greatest extent, stretching from the Atlantic coast of France to the borders of modern-day Hungary and Croatia. He established a system of government that would serve as a model for centuries to come, with a centralized administration, standardized laws and coinage, and a network of loyal nobles who helped to maintain order and collect taxes. But perhaps Charlemagne's greatest legacy was his role in the preservation and promotion of learning and culture. He was a patron of the arts and sciences and encouraged the spread of education throughout his empire. He brought scholars and artists from across Europe to his court at Aachen, where they worked to translate ancient texts, compile encyclopedias, and create beautiful works of art and architecture. Charlemagne's efforts to foster learning and culture would have a lasting impact on European history. The so-called Carolingian Renaissance that flourished under his rule saw a revival of classical learning and a renewed interest in the works of ancient authors like Cicero and Virgil. This intellectual flowering would lay the groundwork for the later Renaissance of the 14th and 15th centuries, which would transform European art, literature, and science. But perhaps the most enduring symbol of Charlemagne's legacy is the imperial crown that he wore as Emperor of the Romans. In the year 800, on Christmas Day, Pope Leo III placed a crown on Charlemagne's head in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, proclaiming him the new Emperor of the West. This coronation was a momentous event, marking the first time since the fall of the Roman Empire that a ruler had claimed the title of Emperor in Western Europe. It was a powerful statement of Charlemagne's authority and prestige, and a recognition of his role as the defender of the Christian faith and the protector of the Church. Of course, the reality of Charlemagne's empire was far from the idealized vision of a united Christian realm. His conquests were often brutal, and his efforts to impose his will on the various peoples of Europe were met with resistance and rebellion. The empire he built would not long survive his death in 814, as his successors struggled to maintain control over the vast and disparate territories he had brought under Frankish rule. But despite the challenges and setbacks he faced, there is no denying the immense impact that Charlemagne had on the course of European history. He was a towering figure who left an indelible mark on the medieval world, shaping its politics, culture, and religion in ways that would resonate for centuries to come. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the story of Charlemagne be a reminder of the enduring power of vision, ambition, and leadership. For even in the darkest and most turbulent of times, there are those who rise above the fray to leave a lasting legacy that echoes through the ages. And so, as the last embers of the day fade into the cool embrace of night, let your mind wander back to that distant time, to a world of kings and emperors, of knights and castles, of faith and learning. Let the gentle currents of history carry you off to a place of dreams, where the great figures of the past come alive once more, and the timeless tales of human endeavor unfold in all their richness and complexity. For in the end, the story of Charlemagne is not just the story of one man, but the story of us all, of the endless struggle to build something greater than ourselves, to leave a mark on the world that will endure long after we are gone. It is a story of hope and inspiration, of the indomitable human spirit that refuses to be bound by the limitations of the present, but instead reaches ever upward toward the infinite possibilities of the future. So let yourself be lulled by the soft whispers of the past as the great pageant of history plays out in your mind's eye. Let the cares of the day slip away and surrender yourself to the gentle embrace of sleep, secure in the knowledge that you are part of a grand and enduring tapestry woven through the ages by the dreams and deeds of those who came before. And as you drift off into the welcoming arms of slumber, know that the legacy of Charlemagne and of all the great figures of history lives on in you, in the courage and determination that you bring to each new day, in the endless quest for knowledge and understanding that drives you forward, in the unquenchable thirst for beauty and meaning that stirs your soul. For in the end, we are all the inheritors of this great and glorious tradition, the bearers of a flame that has been passed down through the generations from the dawn of civilization to the present day. And it is up to us to carry that flame forward, to nurture it and tend it, to pass it on to those who will come after us, so that the light of human progress may never be extinguished, but may shine on, bright and undiminished, for all the ages to come. So rest now, and let the dreams of history be your guide, as you journey through the long and winding path of human experience toward a future filled with wonder and promise. For the medieval world may seem passed away, but its spirit lives on in you and in all those who dare to dream of a better world, a world of peace and prosperity, of justice and compassion, of endless possibility and untold adventure. As the great wheel of time turns on, carrying us ever forward into the unknown, let us hold fast to the lessons of the past and to the enduring values that have sustained us through the centuries. Let us be guided by the example of the great men and women who have gone before us. And let us be the ones who strive always to build a world that is worthy of their sacrifice and their dreams. And so as the last light fades and the veil of sleep descends upon you, know that you are not alone, but are part of a great and noble tradition stretching back through the mists of time to the very dawn of human history. And know that no matter what challenges and trials may lie ahead, you have the strength and the courage to face them, armed with the wisdom of the ages and the unshakable conviction that a better world is always possible, if only we have the will to make it so. Good night, then, and may your dreams be filled with the wonders of the past and the promise of the future. May you find rest and renewal in the gentle embrace of sleep, and may you awake refreshed and ready to take on the challenges of a new day, secure in the knowledge that you are part of a grand and glorious story, a story that will continue to unfold as long as there are those who dare to dream and to hope and to strive for a better tomorrow. As the dawn of the Renaissance brightens the horizon, the medieval world begins to fade into the mists of history. But before we bid farewell to this remarkable era, let us linger a moment longer, like a traveler savoring the last few steps of a long and wondrous journey. In the dying light of the Middle Ages, we see a world that is both familiar and strange, a mirror that reflects our own hopes, fears, and dreams, but in a language that is hauntingly different. The great castles that once dominated the landscape now stand as silent sentinels, their walls whispering of battles fought, loves lost, and secrets kept. The mighty cathedrals, once the beating heart of medieval life, still reach toward the heavens, their spires a testament to the unshakable faith that sustained our ancestors through the darkest of times. But even as the old ways begin to crumble, the seeds of the modern world are already taking root. The printing press, that revolutionary invention, is spreading knowledge to the masses like never before. The great explorers are pushing back the boundaries of the known world, bringing back tales of exotic lands and peoples. And in the halls of the great universities, the rediscovered wisdom of the ancients is mingling with bold new ideas, sparking a renaissance of learning that will change the course of human history. As you drift deeper into sleep, let your mind wander through the winding streets of a medieval town, where the blacksmith's hammer rings out in the early morning air, and the market square bustles with the chatter of merchants and townspeople. Imagine yourself as a pilgrim setting out on a journey to some distant holy shrine. your footsteps echoing on the cobblestones as you pass by the great gates of the city into the wide world beyond. And as you travel, let the faces of the people you meet along the way flash before your mind's eye. The humble peasant toiling in the fields from sunrise to sunset, the noble knight resplendent in his armor, riding off to battle with a prayer on his lips, the wise monk bent over a precious manuscript, preserving the knowledge of the ages for generations to come. Each of them a thread in the great tapestry of medieval life, woven together into a story that echoes through the ages. But perhaps the greatest wonder of the Middle Ages is not the grand deeds of kings and queens, nor the towering achievements of art and architecture, but the simple everyday moments that make up the fabric of human existence. The laughter of children playing in the village green, the comfort of a warm fire on a cold winter's night, the joy of a bountiful harvest, the sorrow of a loved one lost. These are the moments that connect us across the centuries, the universal experiences that remind us of our shared humanity. And so, as you slip deeper into the embrace of sleep, let the medieval world be a comfort and a companion to you. Let its stories and its secrets whisper to you in your dreams, a reminder of the great chain of history that binds us all together. And when you wake in the morning, carry a little piece of that world with you, a talisman against the trials and tribulations of modern life. For in the end, the legacy of the Middle Ages is not just the castles and cathedrals, the kings and queens, the wars and plagues. It is the enduring spirit of humanity that shines through it all, the unquenchable spark of hope and resilience that has carried us through the darkest of times and will continue to guide us into the future. So let us bid a fond farewell to the medieval world, but let us never forget its lessons, its wonders, and its sorrows. Let it be a reminder to us of how far we have come and how far we have yet to go. And above all, let it be a source of inspiration and wonder, a wellspring of stories and dreams that will nourish our souls for generations to come. And with that, my dear listener, it is time for us to part ways. But before I go, let me leave you with one final thought. In this fast-paced, ever-changing world of ours, it is all too easy to forget the simple joys and beauties that surround us every day. So take a moment whenever you can to stop and marvel at the world around you, to gaze up at the stars, to listen to the song of a bird, to feel the warmth of the sun on your face. For in those moments, you are connected to something greater than yourself, to the vast and wondrous tapestry of life that stretches out across the ages. And if you have enjoyed our journey through the medieval world, if it has brought you even a moment of peace, wonder, or inspiration, then I invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. For there are still so many stories left to tell, so many wonders left to discover. And I would be honored to be your guide on those journeys. But for now, my friend, it is time to rest. Let the cares of the day fade away, and let the gentle rhythms of sleep carry you off to a world of dreams. And may you wake in the morning with a heart full of hope, a mind full of wonder, and a soul ready to embrace all the beauty and mystery that life has to offer. Good night, my dear listener, and sweet dreams, until we meet again on some other journey through the mists of history.